What's going on, everyone? It's Monkey DFIC here. We've got something amazing for you today. What if Luffy never ate a devil fruit? Real quick, if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Join thousands of story lovers and hit that subscribe button. Alright, story time. Chapter 1, The Path of Will. You can't swim for shit, Luffy. Shanks' laughter rang through the bar as he watched the soaking wet 7-year-old boy stomp through the doorway of Makino's tavern. Luffy's face scrunched up in fury, water dripping from his black hair onto the wooden floor. Shut up. I'll learn. I almost made it to the buoy this time. Luffy shouted, marching straight up to the red-haired pirate captain. Makino hurried over with a towel. Luffy. You know you shouldn't be swimming alone. The currents are dangerous. I'm gonna be a pirate. Pirates can't be afraid of the sea, Luffy declared, snatching the towel and rubbing his hair vigorously. Shanks took a swig from his mug and grinned. Kid, even pirates respect the sea. That's why we sail on ships instead of trying to swim across the Grand Line. The rest of Shanks' crew roared with laughter, but Luffy wasn't deterred. He climbed onto the stool next to the captain, his small legs dangling above the floor. Then let me join your crew. I'll learn everything. Luffy pounded his fist on the counter. Not a chance, Anchor, Shanks teased, ruffling Luffy's damp hair. You're too young. Besides, you couldn't even handle a tiny piece of the pirate life. Luffy's cheeks puffed out in anger. I'm strong. Gramps has been training me in the mountains since I was 5. Oh. The famous marine hero Garp trains his grandson to be a pirate. That's rich. Shanks laughed heartily, nearly spilling his drink. Across the bar, Ben Beckman watched with amusement. The boy's got spirit, Captain. Spirit doesn't keep you alive on the Grand Line, Shanks replied, then turned back to Luffy. Listen, kid. Being a pirate isn't just about adventure. It's dangerous. You gotta be ready for anything. Luffy crossed his arms over his chest. I'm not afraid of danger. At that moment, the tavern door swung open with a crash. Makino gasped as local mountain bandits swaggered in, led by a scruffy man with a sword at his hip. So these are the pirates everyone's talking about. The bandit leader, Higuma, sneered. Pathetic. They look like a bunch of wimps to me. The atmosphere in the bar instantly changed. Shanks' crew tensed, hands hovering near weapons, but their captain remained relaxed. Welcome, Shanks said casually. We're just having a drink. Care to join us? Higuma spat on the floor. We're not here to drink with sea trash. We want sake, the whole stock. Makino fidgeted nervously. I'm sorry, but these men just ordered our last bottles. All eyes turned to Shanks, who held up an unopened bottle. Here, you can have this one. I haven't opened it yet. Without warning, Higuma smashed the bottle, sending glass and sake flying across the counter. Luffy jumped back, eyes wide as liquor splashed onto Shanks. One bottle isn't enough, Higuma growled. Do you know who I am? I'm worth 8 million berries. Luffy's fists clenched at his sides as he watched Shanks ignore the bandit and start picking up the broken glass from the floor. Sorry about the mess, Makino, Shanks said, completely disregarding Higuma. The bandit's face twisted with rage. He drew his sword and swept it across the bar, sending plates and mugs crashing to the floor before storming out with his men. Why didn't you fight back? Luffy demanded once they'd gone. You're supposed to be a brave pirate. They made you look weak. Shanks smiled gently. Getting angry over a little spilled sake isn't worth it, Luffy. You're a coward. Luffy jumped off his stool and marched toward the door. Where are you going? Shanks called after him. To find someone who acts like a real pirate. Luffy stomped through the village, kicking stones and muttering to himself. His admiration for Shanks had taken a hit. He wandered to the docks, watching fishermen unload their catches and repair nets. Stupid Shanks. A real pirate wouldn't let anyone push him around, Luffy grumbled, sitting on the edge of the pier with his feet dangling over the water. He spotted a small wooden chest on one of the fishing boats. Curiosity piqued, he hopped aboard and lifted the lid. Inside sat a strange purple fruit with swirling patterns. Luffy picked it up, examining it closely. "Hey! Kid! Get away from that!" A fisherman spotted him and shouted. Startled, Luffy dropped the fruit back into the chest and scrambled off the boat. His stomach rumbled, he hadn't eaten since breakfast. Maybe he should head back to the bar and see if Makino would feed him. Back at the tavern, the atmosphere had returned to normal. Shanks spotted Luffy in the doorway and waved him over. "Come back to apologize for calling me a coward," he teased. Luffy stuck out his tongue. "Never." Makino placed a plate of food in front of him. "Eat up, Luffy. You must be hungry after all that swimming." As Luffy devoured his meal, Shanks watched him thoughtfully. "You know, Luffy, there's more to being a pirate than fighting every battle that comes your way." "Like what?" Luffy asked through a mouthful of meat. "Knowing which battles are worth fighting. Protecting what matters." Shanks touched the straw hat on his head. "This hat is precious to me. It was given to me by my captain." Luffy swallowed and looked up at the worn straw hat. Something about it seemed special, even though it was just an old hat. Days passed, and despite their disagreement, Luffy continued hanging around Shanks and his crew, absorbing their stories of the Grand Line and distant islands. Shanks never brought up the incident with the bandits again, but Luffy couldn't forget it. One afternoon, Luffy sat at the bar while Shanks' crew was out restocking their ship. The door swung open, and Higuma strutted in with his bandits. "Where are those pirates? Finally ran away, did they?" Higuma laughed, claiming Shanks' usual seat. Makino nervously served them sake, glancing worriedly at Luffy. "Shanks isn't afraid of you." Luffy blurted out. "He just didn't think you were worth fighting." The tavern went silent. Higuma turned slowly to look at the small boy. "What did you say, brat?" "You heard me." Luffy jumped to his feet, fists raised. "Shanks is 100 times the man you are." Higuma grabbed Luffy by the collar, lifting him off the ground. "Seems like someone needs to be taught a lesson about respecting their betters." "Let him go." Makino cried. "He's just a child." "A child who needs to learn his place," Higuma replied, dragging Luffy outside. Word spread quickly through the village. Makino ran to find Shanks while Higuma paraded Luffy through the town square. "See this disrespectful brat?" Higuma announced to the gathering crowd. "This is what happens when you don't show proper respect to the mountain bandits." Luffy kicked and struggled. "Let me go, you stinky bandit. Fight fair." "Fair." Higuma laughed, throwing Luffy to the ground. "Pirates and bandits don't fight fair, boy. That's your first lesson." He pressed his boot against Luffy's head, pushing his face into the dirt. Luffy strained against the pressure, refusing to cry out despite the pain. "I'm not afraid of you," Luffy spat, dirt mixing with the blood from his split lip. "You should be." Higuma drew his sword, raising it high. "Time for your final lesson." "That's enough." Shanks stood at the edge of the square, his crew behind him. His usual easygoing smile was gone, replaced by a cold, hard stare. Higuma sneered. "Look who decided to show up. The cowardly pirate." "Let the boy go," Shanks said, walking forward. "Your quarrel is with me. Captain, should we take care of these mountain rats?" Lucky Roo asked, munching on a piece of meat. "No need," Shanks replied, eyes fixed on Higuma. "Unless they insist." One of Higuma's men rushed forward, pointing a pistol at Shanks' head. "Don't move or I'll blow your brains out." Before anyone could blink, Lucky Roo appeared behind the bandit and fired a single shot. The man crumpled to the ground. "You dirty," another bandit began, but went silent as Ben Beckman stepped forward, leveling his rifle. "We're pirates," Shanks said calmly. "We don't play by your rules or claim to be good men. But there are things we won't stand for." Pointing a gun at me? That's a declaration of intent. Threatening my friends? His eyes darkened. That's a death wish. The pressure in the air changed. Several of Higuma's men collapsed, foaming at the mouth. The bandit leader's eyes widened in fear as he realized what he was facing. A smoke bomb. Higuma shouted, throwing something to the ground. Thick smoke billowed around him as he grabbed Luffy and fled. When the smoke cleared, both were gone. Damn it! Shanks looked around frantically. Where did he take Luffy? Captain. The harbor. Yasopp pointed toward the docks. Shanks ran, faster than Luffy had ever seen anyone move. At the pier, Higuma had stolen a small boat and was already rowing away, Luffy struggling in his grip. "You won't follow me out here, pirate!" Higuma shouted across the water. "Not for one worthless brat." "I'm not worthless." Luffy bit down hard on Higuma's arm. The bandit howled in pain and struck Luffy across the face. "You little..." A massive shadow rose from the sea beside their boat. The Lord of the Coast, a giant sea serpent known for devouring ships, loomed over them. Higuma screamed in terror as the monster's jaws opened wide. In his panic, he shoved Luffy overboard and tried to paddle away. The Sea King swallowed Higuma in one bite, boat and all. Then its red eyes turned to Luffy, thrashing in the water. "Help!" Luffy cried, struggling to stay afloat. He'd always been a poor swimmer, and now fear made his limbs heavy. "Luffy!" Shanks dove into the water, swimming with powerful strokes. The Sea King lunged. Luffy closed his eyes, certain he was about to die, but the bite never came. He felt someone grab him and opened his eyes to see Shanks, shielding him with his body. Shanks turned his head, fixing the monster with a stare so intense that the creature froze. Something invisible passed between them, and the Sea King retreated beneath the waves. "It's okay, Luffy. I've got you," Shanks said, swimming back toward shore with one arm, his left arm nowhere to be seen. Blood spread through the water around them. "Shanks! Your arm!" Luffy cried in horror. "It's just an arm," Shanks replied through gritted teeth. "I've got another. As long as you're safe, that's all that matters." Tears streamed down Luffy's face as they reached the shore. The Red Hair pirates rushed to help their captain while Luffy stood shaking, unable to process what had happened. "Why?" Luffy sobbed. "Why would you do that for me?" Shanks smiled through his pain. "Because you're worth it, Luffy." Later, as the ship's doctor treated Shanks' wound, Luffy sat quietly by his bedside. The captain had lost his left arm completely, sacrificed to save a boy who wasn't even part of his crew. "I'm sorry," Luffy whispered, tears threatening again. "Don't be," Shanks replied. "Every great journey has its cost. This won't stop me from finding the One Piece." Luffy wiped his eyes. "I'll make it up to you. I'll become the strongest pirate ever, without even needing a devil fruit or anything. I'll be so strong that I can protect everyone without losing any parts." Shanks laughed, then winced at the pain. "I believe you will, Luffy." The Red Hair pirates stayed in Fusha village until Shanks had recovered enough to travel. On the day of their departure, Luffy stood at the dock, watching as they loaded the last of their supplies. "You're really leaving?" Luffy asked, trying to sound brave. "The Grand Line calls us back," Shanks replied, adjusting his black cape with his remaining arm. "But I have a feeling we'll meet again someday. When we do, I'll have my own crew. And we'll be even stronger than yours." Shanks smiled and removed the straw hat from his head. "Then take this." He placed the hat on Luffy's head. This hat means a lot to me, Luffy. It's my treasure. Take care of it for me, and return it when you become a great pirate. Luffy touched the hat, eyes wide with surprise. Your hat. But, a promise is a promise, Shanks said. That hat has seen a lot of adventures. Make sure you add plenty more to its story. Tears flowed freely down Luffy's face now. I will. I promise. As the red force sailed away, Luffy stood on the dock until it disappeared over the horizon. The straw hat felt heavy with responsibility on his small head, but he wore it proudly. I'll become king of the pirates, he whispered to the sea. Just watch me, Shanks. Garp's fist came down hard, and Luffy barely dodged in time. At 10 years old, he'd grown faster, though his grandfather's training sessions still left him bruised and exhausted. Too slow. Garp barked. If I were a real enemy, you'd be dead. You hit harder than real enemies. Luffy protested, rubbing his shoulder where an earlier blow had connected. They stood in a clearing on empty Kolobo, where Luffy now lived with mountain bandits led by Dayton. 3 years had passed since Shanks left, and Garp's training had intensified. Real enemies won't hold back, Garp replied. Especially on the Grand Line. If you still insist on this foolish pirate dream, you need to be stronger. Luffy adjusted the straw hat on his head and took a fighting stance. I'm going to be the Pirate King. I promised Shanks. That red-haired menace, Garp muttered. Should have arrested him when I had the chance. Luffy charged, fist pulled back. Garp easily sidestepped, but Luffy anticipated this, pivoting to throw a kick at his grandfather's side. Garp blocked it with one arm, but his eyebrows rose slightly. You're learning. I train every day, even when you're not here, Luffy said, jumping back to avoid Garp's counterattack. Not just combat training. Your awareness has improved. Garp studied his grandson with a calculating look. Tell me, Luffy, have you been feeling anything strange lately? Luffy tilted his head. Strange how? Like you can sense when an attack is coming before you see it. Or knowing where someone is without looking. Luffy's eyes widened. Sometimes. Like yesterday, I knew Ace was sneaking up behind me even though I didn't hear him. Garp's expression grew serious. Hockey, he murmured. And at your age. What's hockey? Luffy asked, curiosity momentarily overriding his combat focus. A rare smile crossed Garp's face. Something that might make you a halfway decent marine one day. I'm going to be a pirate. Luffy shouted. We'll see, Garp replied cryptically. For now, let's work on your focus. Close your eyes. But then I can't see you coming. Exactly. You need to feel it. Garp moved into position. Now, try to dodge my attacks. For the next hour, Garp trained Luffy blindfolded, teaching him to sense approaching danger. Most attempts ended with Luffy eating dirt, but occasionally, he would dodge at just the right moment. Not bad for a brat, Garp admitted as they finally took a break. You might have some natural talent for observation hockey. Luffy gulped water from a flask. Is that what Shanks used to scare away the Sea King? Garp stiffened. What are you talking about? When the Sea King attacked us, Shanks just looked at it, and it swam away, Luffy explained, miming the intense stare. He didn't even touch it. Conqueror's hockey, Garp muttered under his breath. That damn red hair. He cleared his throat. That's something different, Luffy. Very rare. But the basics of hockey might serve you well, especially since you didn't eat a devil fruit. Luffy perked up. Will it make me super strong? It's not about being super strong. It's about using your will to overcome obstacles. Garp ruffled Luffy's hair roughly. But yes, mastering hockey makes you stronger than most devil fruit users who rely solely on their powers. Then I'll master it. Luffy jumped to his feet. I don't need a devil fruit to become Pirate King. Garp sighed heavily. I'm trying to train a marine, and instead, I'm creating a monster of a pirate. The best pirate. Luffy corrected with a grin. Their training sessions intensified after that. Garp visited more frequently, pushing Luffy to develop his nascent hockey abilities alongside traditional combat training. Between his grandfather's visits, Luffy practiced with Ace, an older boy who had initially despised him but gradually became like a brother. By 13, Luffy could predict simple attacks before they happened. By 15, he could sense presences through walls. His physical strength grew proportionally, his body hardening through constant training and wilderness survival. Without the stretching abilities of the Gomu Gomu no Mi, Luffy developed different fighting techniques. He incorporated the staff fighting Garp taught him, the dirty brawling style he learned from the mountain bandits, and his own unique approach that prioritized speed and unpredictability. On his 17th birthday, Luffy stood at the shore of Dawn Island, a small boat packed with supplies beside him. Makino, the mayor, and even Dayton had come to see him off. Are you sure about this, Luffy? Makino asked, adjusting the collar of his red vest. The sea is dangerous. I've been training for this my whole life, Luffy replied, his voice deeper now but still carrying that infectious enthusiasm. I'm going to find the One Piece. The mayor shook his head. Just like your grandfather feared. A pirate through and through. The worst kind, Dayton agreed, though her gruff voice held a note of pride. Too stubborn to die. Luffy laughed and climbed into his boat. I'll make you all proud. Just watch the newspapers for the name of the future Pirate King. Do you even know how to navigate? The mayor called as Luffy pushed away from the dock. Nope. But I'll figure it out. Luffy waved his straw hat in the air. Or I'll find someone who can. As his small boat caught the current, Luffy faced forward, toward the endless blue horizon. The first step of his journey had begun. The Lord of the Coast emerged from the water directly in front of Luffy's boat, its massive jaws open wide. The same Sea King that had taken Shanks' arm now threatened to take Luffy's life before his journey truly began. Luffy stood tall in his boat, straw hat shadowing his eyes. Remember me? The Sea King lunged. In one fluid motion, Luffy leapt into the air, spinning to build momentum before delivering a devastating kick to the monster's snout. Hawk Strike. The impact sent shockwaves through the water. The Sea King reeled back, stunned by the unexpected power from the small human. Before it could recover, Luffy landed on its head and brought both fists down. This is for Shanks' arm. The Sea King crashed back into the water, unconscious. Luffy jumped back to his boat, which miraculously remained intact. That's right, he said, adjusting his hat. I'm not the same weak kid anymore. The sea remained calm after that, as if acknowledging his victory. Luffy consulted a crude map he'd drawn based on stories from travelers to the village. Let's see. Shell's town should be somewhere in this direction. He studied the clouds and position of the sun, recalling navigation lessons from both Garp and Shanks' crew. Days passed as Luffy drifted with purpose through East Blue. He fished for food, rationed his fresh water, and kept the straw hat safe during unexpected squalls. Without a proper log pose or navigator, he relied on instinct and the occasional passing ship for directions. Finally, a port town appeared on the horizon. Luffy grinned wide and urged his boat forward with renewed energy. Civilization. And hopefully some meat. As he approached the harbor of Shell's town, Luffy spotted a cruise ship nearby. A large pink vessel caught his attention, it seemed out of place among the naval and fishing boats. Pirates, he wondered aloud, squinting to see better. Luffy docked his small craft and leaped onto the pier, stretching his arms above his head after days at sea. His stomach growled audibly, drawing amused glances from dockworkers. First order of business, food. He wandered into town, taking in the sights and sounds. Despite his empty stomach, Luffy noticed something odd. the townspeople seemed nervous, darting glances at Marines patrolling the streets. Many shops were closed, their windows shuttered despite it being midday. "What's with this place?" he muttered, approaching a food stall that remained open. 5 meat buns, please." Luffy placed a handful of berries on the counter. The vendor, an older man with a weathered face, glanced nervously at a Marine walking past before handing over the food. "You're new here, aren't you?" the vendor asked quietly as Luffy devoured the first bun. "Just arrived." Luffy confirmed through a mouthful of food. "Word of advice, keep your head down around the Marine base. Captain Morgan doesn't take kindly to strangers causing trouble." Luffy swallowed. "Captain Morgan, the Marine in charge, rules this place like his personal kingdom." The vendor's voice dropped to a whisper. "His son Helmeppo is even worse, strutting around like he owns the place, setting his pet wolf on anyone who disagrees with him." "Sounds like a real jerk," Luffy replied, finishing his third bun. Speaking of jerks, the vendor nodded toward the street, where people were hastily clearing a path. A scrawny blond man in an expensive suit swaggered down the middle of the road, flanked by Marine guards. His face bore an expression of perpetual disdain. "Make way for the great Helmeppo-sama," one Marine announced unnecessarily, as civilians were already pressing themselves against buildings to avoid notice. "That's him. He doesn't look so tough," Luffy observed, loudly enough that several nearby people gasped. The vendor paled. "Quiet, boy. He'll hear you." Too late. Helmeppo's head swiveled toward the food stall, his eyes narrowing on Luffy. "You there. New face." Helmeppo approached, hand resting on an ornate dagger at his hip that looked more decorative than functional. "Passing through or planning to stay?" Luffy finished his last meat bun before answering. "Just arrived. I'm looking for strong people to join my pirate crew." The surrounding crowd went deadly silent. The vendor closed his eyes in dismay. "Pirate crew?" Helmeppo's voice rose an octave. "You dare announce pirate intentions in a Marine-controlled town? In front of me, the son of Captain Axehand Morgan?" Luffy picked his teeth casually. "Yep." For a moment, Helmeppo seemed too shocked to respond. Then he burst into high-pitched laughter. "You've got guts, I'll give you that. Or perhaps just stupidity." He turned to his guards. "Arrest this fool. My father will decide whether to hang him or just cut off his hands." The Marines moved forward, hands on their weapons. Luffy didn't flinch. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," he said calmly. "Oh. And why not?" Helmeppo sneered. "Because I don't want to hurt Marines if I don't have to. My grandpa wouldn't like it." This earned another laugh from Helmeppo. "Your grandfather? Should we be scared of some old fisherman?" Luffy shrugged. "Marine Vice Admiral Monkey D. Garp probably wouldn't care if I roughed up a few corrupt Marines. But I'd rather not cause him paperwork." The name Garp froze every Marine in place. Helmeppo's smug expression faltered. "You're lying," he accused, though with less certainty. "Prove it." Luffy reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded, somewhat crumpled paper, a rare photo of him as a child sitting on Garp's shoulders, both grinning widely despite matching bruises. "That proves nothing." Helmeppo blustered after glancing at it. "Guards, wait, young master," one Marine interrupted cautiously. "That does look like Vice Admiral Garp. Perhaps we should, silence." Helmeppo snapped. "I don't care who his grandfather is. No one disrespects me in my town." During this exchange, Luffy noticed something. The townspeople's fear was directed at Helmeppo and the Marines, not at the mention of pirates. Something was very wrong here. "Hey," he addressed the crowd, ignoring Helmeppo's sputtering. "Is there something going on in this town? Why is everyone so scared of these guys?" An older woman stepped forward hesitantly. Captain Morgan rules through fear. Anyone who defies him is executed. That's enough. Helmeppo shouted. One more word and you'll join that traitor Zoro in the execution yard. Luffy's ears perked up. Zoro. Roronoa Zoro is here. The famous bounty hunter, another villager confirmed quietly. He's been tied up in the marine courtyard for nearly 3 weeks without food or water. All because he killed Helmeppo's pet wolf when it attacked a little girl. Luffy's expression darkened. 3 weeks without food. He made a deal with me, Helmeppo boasted, regaining his confidence. If he survives a month, I'll let him go free. Not that anyone could survive such treatment. He laughed again, that grating high-pitched sound. Something shifted in Luffy's demeanor. The casual, almost carefree young man was replaced by something harder, more focused. The Marines nearest to him instinctively took a step back. Where is he? Luffy asked quietly. Helmeppo blinked, thrown by the sudden change. What? Where is Zoro being held? In the execution yard at the Marine base, Helmeppo replied automatically, then caught himself. But you can't. Luffy was already walking away, in the direction of the towering Marine headquarters visible on the hill overlooking the town. Hey! Stop him! Helmeppo ordered, but the Marines hesitated, looking between the retreating figure and their commander's son. Luffy heard running footsteps behind him and sighed. He didn't want to fight Marines, but he wouldn't let them stop him either. As the first guard reached for his shoulder, Luffy spun, moving faster than the Marine could track. Sorry about this, he said, before delivering a quick chop to the man's neck. The Marine crumpled, unconscious but unharmed. The other guards skidded to a halt, drawing their rifles. Stand down or we'll shoot, one called, voice shaking slightly. Luffy turned to face them fully, his straw hat shadowing his eyes. I'm going to see Zoro. You can try to stop me, but you'll fail. Choose wisely. Something in his voice, absolute certainty without a hint of boasting, made the Marines hesitate. In that moment of indecision, Luffy vanished from their sight, moving too quickly for untrained eyes to follow. By the time they realized what had happened, he was already halfway up the hill to the Marine base. The execution yard was exactly what Luffy expected, a barren dirt field surrounded by high walls. In the center, tied to a wooden post under the blazing sun, was a figure in a white shirt and dark green haramaki. Luffy approached casually, stopping a few feet away. You don't look like the pirate hunter Roronoa Zoro I've heard about. The man raised his head slowly, revealing a gaunt face and bloodshot eyes. Despite his condition, his gaze remained fierce and focused. Another idiot come to gawk. Zoro's voice was raspy from thirst, but still carried an edge of danger. Get lost before the Marines catch you. They already tried to stop me, Luffy replied with a shrug. Didn't work out for them. Zoro studied him more carefully. Who are you? Monkey D. Luffy. I'm going to be king of the pirates. A wheezing laugh escaped Zoro's cracked lips. King of the pirates? You're either the biggest dreamer or the biggest fool I've ever met. Little of both, Luffy admitted with a grin. Want to join my crew? Your crew? Zoro raised an eyebrow. You're actually serious about being a pirate? Dead serious. And I need a strong swordsman. Zoro nodded toward his empty hip. They took my swords. Besides, I'm not interested in becoming a pirate. What are you interested in? Something flickered in Zoro's eyes, a dream, a promise. I made a vow to become the world's greatest swordsman. I can't die here. Luffy's grin widened. Perfect. The Pirate King should have nothing less than the world's greatest swordsman on his crew. You don't give up, do you? Despite his condition, a small smirk crossed Zoro's face. I told you, I'm not interested. How about this, Luffy proposed. I'll get your swords back. If I do, you join my crew. If not, you're free to go your own way. Before Zoro could respond, a small ladder appeared at the wall of the yard. A young girl with pigtails climbed over, carrying a small bundle. "Shoo," she whispered, hurrying toward them. "I brought you some rice balls, Zoro-san." "Rika." Zoro hissed. "I told you not to come here. It's dangerous." "But you haven't eaten in weeks," the girl protested, unwrapping her bundle to reveal 2 rice balls. "I made them myself." Luffy's stomach growled at the sight of food, but he restrained himself. This girl had risked punishment to bring these to Zoro. "How touching," a familiar grating voice called from the gate. Helmeppo strutted into the yard, flanked by Marines. A little criminal feeding a bigger one. The girl, Rika, froze in terror. "Those look good," Helmeppo said, snatching one of the rice balls from her hands. He took a bite and immediately spat it out. "Disgusting. Too sweet. You're supposed to use salt, you idiot." "I thought they would taste better sweet," Rika said in a small voice. Helmeppo threw the rice ball on the ground and stomped on it. "Let me teach you a lesson." He reached for the second one. Luffy moved faster than anyone could see, appearing between Helmeppo and the girl. "That's enough." Helmeppo stumbled back in surprise. "You! How did you get in here?" His eyes darted to the Marines. "Arrest him." "Rika," Luffy said without taking his eyes off Helmeppo, "give Zoro the other rice ball and then leave. These guys won't touch you." The girl hesitated only briefly before doing as he said, placing the remaining rice ball in Zoro's mouth. The swordsman chewed gratefully, his first food in weeks. "Thank you," he said quietly as she retreated. "How dare you?" Helmeppo sputtered. "Do you know who I am?" "A spoiled brat hiding behind his father's power," Luffy replied simply. Helmeppo's face contorted with rage. "Guards! Shoot him! Shoot them both!" The Marines raised their rifles uncertainly. "But sir, Zoro still has a week left in his agreement." "I lied!" Helmeppo shrieked. "I never intended to let him live. Now fire or I'll have my father execute you all." Luffy's expression darkened. "So you were planning to kill him all along?" "Of course. No one makes a fool of me and lives." Helmeppo gloated. Zoro chuckled darkly from his post. "Guess I was right not to trust you. Untie me, Luffy. I'll join your crew." "That's more like it." Luffy grinned, moving to untie Zoro's ropes. "Welcome aboard, first mate." "Fire!" Helmeppo ordered, and the Marines reluctantly pulled their triggers. Luffy sensed the bullets coming. In a display of speed that left everyone gaping, he positioned himself in front of Zoro, facing the firing squad. "That won't work," he said calmly, and then, to the astonishment of everyone present, he seemed to shift slightly as each bullet approached. None touched him. "What the?" Helmeppo stumbled backward. "What are you?" "Just a guy who trained really hard," Luffy replied, continuing to untie Zoro. "And learned a thing or two about observation hockey from my grandfather." The ropes fell away, and Zoro stood shakily, his muscles cramping after weeks of immobility. "I need my swords," he said. "3 katana." Luffy nodded. "Where are they?" Helmeppo, seeing his predicament, suddenly changed tactics. "In my room. I can take you there. Just don't hurt me." "Lead the way," Luffy gestured, then turned to Zoro. "Can you walk?" "I've endured worse," Zoro replied, taking a few unsteady steps. "But I'll need a minute to get my strength back." "Meet me at the entrance when you can," Luffy said. "I'll get your swords." With Helmeppo as an unwilling guide, Luffy entered the Marine base. Marines they passed stared in disbelief at the civilian manhandling their commander's son. In there, Helmeppo pointed to an ornate door. My room. Luffy pushed it open to find the gaudiest bedroom he'd ever seen, pink wallpaper, velvet furnishings, and gold trim everywhere. In one corner stood 3 swords, one with a distinctive white sheath. These them? Luffy asked, gathering the weapons. Yes. Now let me go. Helmeppo whined. Luffy released him with a shove. Get out of here. As Helmeppo scurried away, Luffy heard commotion from outside. He moved to the window and saw Marines gathering in the courtyard below. At their center stood a massive man with an axe for a right hand, Captain Morgan himself. Who dares create this disturbance? Morgan bellowed. Find the intruder and kill him. Luffy watched as Zoro limped into view, still unarmed and weakened, but defiant. Morgan's eyes locked onto him. Roronoa Zoro. Your execution date has been moved up to right now. Marines surrounded Zoro, who stood his ground despite his condition. Time to make an entrance, Luffy muttered. He opened the window, judged the distance, and jumped. 3 stories below, Morgan raised his axe hand. Die, traitor. The axe never connected. Luffy landed between them, blocking the massive weapon with one of Zoro's sheathed swords. Your swords, he said, handing the other 2 to Zoro without taking his eyes off Morgan. As promised. Zoro grinned wolfishly as he took his weapons. The change was immediate, with his swords in hand, he no longer seemed weak or unsteady. I'll handle the small fry, Zoro said, unsheathing all 3 swords, placing one in his mouth in his signature style. You take the big guy. With pleasure. Luffy cracked his knuckles. Morgan towered over him, nearly twice his height and 3 times as broad. You dare challenge me? Captain Axehand Morgan. You're not a real Marine, Luffy replied. Real Marines protect people. You just bully them. Insolent whelp. Die. Morgan swung his axe in a deadly arc. Luffy dodged easily. Too slow. Morgan attacked again and again, each swing more desperate than the last. Luffy evaded effortlessly, reading his opponent's moves before they happened. Around them, Zoro cut through the rank-and-file Marines with precise, efficient movements. Despite his weakened state, not a single Marine could touch him. Hold still. Morgan roared in frustration. Nah, Luffy replied. I think it's time to end this. He darted forward, moving inside Morgan's guard. The captain tried to adjust his swing, but Luffy was too fast. A series of rapid punches hammered into Morgan's midsection, each impact resonating with focused power. Hawk Gatling. Morgan doubled over, gasping for breath. Luffy followed with an uppercut that lifted the massive man off his feet. This is for terrorizing this town. Luffy shouted as Morgan crashed down. And this, he leapt high into the air, gathering momentum for a devastating final blow, is for Zoro. His foot connected with Morgan's chest in an axe kick that cracked the stone beneath them. Morgan lay defeated, unconscious and bleeding. The remaining Marines stared in shock. Their invincible captain, defeated by a boy in a straw hat. Anyone else want to fight? Luffy asked casually, adjusting his hat. The Marines looked at each other, then at their fallen captain. As one, they threw down their weapons and cheered. Morgan is defeated. We're free. Thank you. Luffy blinked in surprise. You're happy. An older Marine stepped forward. Captain Morgan ruled through fear and intimidation. None of us dared oppose him, but we hated what he was doing to this town. Zoro sheathed his swords. Looks like we're the heroes today, Captain. Luffy grinned at the title. Captain, huh? I like the sound of that. Word spread quickly through Shell's town. By the time Luffy and Zoro made their way back to the port, people lined the streets, cheering and throwing flowers. Rika ran up to them, beaming. You saved our town, she exclaimed, hugging Luffy around the waist. It was nothing, Luffy replied, patting her head. Just helping out. At a local restaurant, the owner insisted on feeding them for free. Zoro watched in amazement as Luffy devoured plate after plate. Where does it all go, he wondered aloud. Luffy patted his stomach. Need lots of energy for adventures. Speaking of which, Zoro said, becoming serious, what's our next move, Captain? Luffy leaned back, thinking. We need a navigator. And a bigger ship. This is just the beginning of our crew. Any idea where to find a navigator in East Blue? Luffy pulled out a crumpled wanted poster he'd been carrying. I heard rumors about a girl who can predict the weather. They call her Cat Burglar Nami. Supposedly she's working with Buggy the Clown's crew near Orange Town. Zoro raised an eyebrow. A pirate thief as our navigator. The best navigator in East Blue, according to rumors. Luffy grinned. And if she's with Buggy, that means we can test our strength against a Grand Line pirate. As they finished their meal, a Marine officer approached their table. He saluted smartly. On behalf of the Navy, I thank you for your assistance in removing Captain Morgan, he said formally. However, I must inform you that we've received word of your declaration of piracy. Our duty compels us to arrest any self-proclaimed pirates. Luffy and Zoro exchanged glances. How long will you give us to leave port? Luffy asked. The officer checked his watch. Given your service to this town. Shall we say 2 hours? Unfortunately, I'll be occupied with paperwork during that time, and unable to monitor the harbor. Luffy grinned. 2 hours is plenty. Thank you. After the Marine left, Zoro chuckled. Not all Navy men are bad, it seems. My grandpa would be pleased, Luffy replied, standing up. Let's gather supplies and get moving. Our adventure is just beginning. 2 hours later, a small boat with a makeshift Jolly Roger flag sailed from Shell's Town. On board, a young man in a straw hat stood at the bow, eyes fixed on the horizon. Beside him, a green-haired swordsman checked the edge on his blades. East Blue better be ready, Luffy declared to the open sea. The future Pirate King is coming. We're lost, Zoro stated flatly. We're not lost. We're exploring. Luffy replied from the front of their small boat. 3 days had passed since they left Shell's Town. What should have been a direct journey to Orange Town had turned into a meandering path through East Blue's waters. Without a proper navigator, they relied on Luffy's limited knowledge and a crude map they'd purchased before leaving. Zoro sighed. This is why we need that navigator you mentioned. Exactly. Nami's supposed to be the best in East Blue. Luffy shaded his eyes, scanning the horizon. Hey, I think I see something. In the distance, a small island came into view. As they approached, they could make out buildings along the shore, a town port. See? Not lost. Luffy proclaimed triumphantly. Zoro squinted at the approaching landmass. Is that Orange Town? No idea. But it's a town, so we can at least ask for directions. They guided their boat into the harbor. Immediately, they noticed something strange, the port was nearly deserted. Several fishing boats sat unattended, and the nearby buildings showed signs of recent damage. Looks like there was a fight, Zoro observed, hand resting on his swords. As they tied up their boat, a thin man peeked out from behind a nearby crate. Are you with Buggy's crew? He asked nervously. Luffy and Zoro exchanged glances. Buggy? He's here. The man nodded fearfully. Buggy the Clown took over our town a week ago. Most people fled to the next island. Only those too stubborn or too poor to leave remain. What about a woman named Nami? Luffy asked. Orange hair, good with maps. The thief? The man spat. She showed up 2 days ago, cozied up to Buggy's crew. Last I heard, she was helping them map the Grand Line route. Luffy grinned. Sounds like our navigator. Where can we find Buggy? The man pointed toward the center of town. The tavern at the main square. But you'd be fools to go there. Buggy has over 50 men, and he's a devil fruit user. Devil fruit, huh? Luffy's grin widened. Interesting. We'll handle it, Zoro assured the man, adjusting his bandana over his head. You might want to clear out for a while. As they walked through the abandoned streets, Zoro studied his captain. You seem excited to face this Buggy character. I've never fought a devil fruit user before, Luffy admitted. Gramps told me about them, but I've only seen Shanks use his haki to counter their powers. And you think you can do the same? Zoro asked skeptically. Luffy shrugged. No idea. That's what makes it an adventure. They paused at the edge of the town square. In front of the tavern, a colorful tent had been erected, and the sounds of raucous laughter and music spilled out. Subtle, Zoro remarked dryly. Let's crash their party. Luffy started forward, but Zoro caught his arm. Hold on. We should at least have a plan. I have a plan. Beat up Buggy, get Nami to join our crew, find the One Piece, become Pirate King. Zoro pinched the bridge of his nose. I meant a more immediate plan. Before they could debate further, the tavern door burst open. A young woman with short orange hair ran out, clutching a rolled-up parchment. Behind her, angry shouts erupted. Thief! Stop her! That's our chart of the Grand Line. She must be a marine spy. The woman, presumably Nami, sprinted across the square, unaware of Luffy and Zoro. When she spotted them, she skidded to a halt, eyes widening in alarm. Who are, get down! Luffy shouted, lunging forward. Nami ducked instinctively as several knives flew through the air where her head had been moments before. Luffy caught one, dodged two others, and the last embedded itself in a nearby post. Thanks, Nami gasped. Who are you guys? I'm Monkey D. Luffy, future king of the pirates. This is Roronoa Zoro, my first mate. Luffy grinned. And you must be Nami, our new navigator. Nami's expression shifted from gratitude to horror. Pirates. I hate pirates. I'd rather die than join a pirate crew. That can be arranged, a new voice called. From the tavern emerged a bizarre figure, a man with a large red nose, blue hair, and elaborate clown makeup. Behind him, a crowd of flamboyantly dressed pirates spilled into the square. Buggy the Clown, I presume, Zoro said, hand on his swords. The one and only. Buggy bowed theatrically. Captain of the Buggy Pirates and soon-to-be ruler of the Grand Line. His gaze fixed on Nami. Once I recover my chart from this lying little cat. Nami stepped behind Luffy. Look, I don't know these guys. We're not together. Doesn't matter, Buggy snapped. You're all dead. No one steals from Buggy the Clown. His hand detached from his wrist, flying through the air with a dagger clutched in its fingers, aimed straight at Nami's heart. Luffy moved without thinking, snatching the hand from mid-air and squeezing until Buggy yelped in pain, forcing him to retract it. The Barabara no Mi, Luffy observed. You can separate your body parts. Buggy's eyes narrowed. You know of devil fruits, yet you don't seem surprised. Are you a user yourself? Luffy shook his head. Nope. Just a regular human. Then you're in over your head, boy. Buggy's hands detached again, each holding a dagger. Bara Bara Festival. His body separated into dozens of pieces, swirling around the square in a tornado of flesh and weapons. His crew cheered as Buggy's floating head laughed maniacally. How do you fight something like that? Nami whispered, clutching her stolen chart. Zoro unsheathed his swords. Find the core. Most separating types have a central piece that can't be divided. Luffy nodded, closing his eyes briefly. When he opened them, he seemed more focused, more aware. "There," he said, pointing at Buggy's feet, which remained planted on the ground. "He can't fly. His feet stay grounded." "Smart observation." Buggy called, sending his hands to attack from multiple angles. "But knowing my weakness won't save you." Luffy dodged the flying daggers with ease, his movements fluid and precise. Zoro deflected those that came his way, the clang of metal on metal ringing through the square. "Zoro," Luffy called, ducking under a floating arm. "Protect Nami. I'll handle the clown." "On it." Zoro moved to Nami's side. "Stay behind me. I didn't ask for your help." Nami protested, though she didn't move away. Buggy's floating head laughed. Such confidence from a non-devil fruit user. "Do you know who I am? I sailed with red-haired Shanks himself." Luffy froze mid-dodge. "You knew Shanks?" "Knew him. That red-haired bastard ruined my life." Buggy's head floated closer. "He made me eat the Bara no Mi by accident and cost me a treasure map worth millions." "Shanks saved my life," Luffy said quietly, touching his straw hat. "He gave me this hat." Buggy's eyes widened in recognition. "That hat, that's Shanks' hat. The one he never took off." His expression contorted with rage. "All the more reason to destroy it." A detached hand flew toward Luffy, knife aimed at the straw hat. Without apparent effort, Luffy caught the wrist and squeezed until bones cracked. "Don't touch the hat," he said, his voice suddenly cold. Buggy screamed as pain shot through his captured hand. "You bastard! Bara cannon." His other hand shot forward, holding a larger dagger. Luffy didn't move, didn't flinch. Just as the blade was about to pierce his chest, he shifted slightly, the knife passing harmlessly by his side. "Observation Haki," Nami whispered in awe. "He can predict attacks." "What are you?" Buggy demanded, recalling his injured hand. Luffy cracked his knuckles. "Just a guy who made a promise to return this hat one day. And I won't let anyone damage it before then." He moved forward with sudden speed, appearing in front of Buggy's feet before anyone could react. With one powerful sweep, he knocked the clown's feet out from under him. Buggy's floating parts faltered as he lost balance. "My feet." "Your core," Luffy corrected, grabbing both feet and leaping high into the air. "Let's see how well you can control those parts from up here." Below, Buggy's scattered body parts began to twitch and fall randomly as his concentration broke. His crew backed away, uncertain. "Put me down." Buggy's head shrieked, trying to float up to Luffy but unable to rise high enough. "If you insist." At the peak of his jump, Luffy spun and hurled Buggy's feet back to earth with tremendous force. The feet crashed into the ground, creating a small crater. Buggy's head screamed in pain as his scattered parts flew back together around his feet. Luffy landed next to the reassembled but battered clown. "Still want to fight?" Buggy struggled to stand, his body trembling. You monster. What kind of normal human has that kind of strength?" "The kind that's going to be Pirate King," Luffy replied simply. Buggy's crew looked at their defeated captain, then at the confident young man in the straw hat. As one, they began backing away. "Get him!" Buggy ordered, but none moved forward. Zoro stepped up beside Luffy, all three swords drawn. "I suggest you leave this town. Today." Buggy glared at them, then at Nami who still clutched his chart. "This isn't over. I'll remember this, Straw Hat." With surprising agility for his injured state, he scrambled away, his crew following in disarray. Silence fell over the square. Nami stared at Luffy with a mixture of fear and admiration. "That was impressive," she admitted reluctantly. "But I meant what I said. I hate pirates. I won't join your crew." Luffy turned to her, his serious battle demeanor replaced by his usual grin. "Why do you hate pirates so much?" "That's personal," she snapped. "Let's just say I have my reasons." "Fair enough," Luffy replied. "But we really do need a navigator. And you're the best in East Blue, right?" Nami hesitated, pride warring with caution. "I am. But, we could make a deal," Luffy suggested. "Help us navigate to the Grand Line, and we'll help you with whatever you're trying to accomplish." "You don't even know what I want." "Doesn't matter. That's what friends do." Nami studied him curiously. "You're a strange pirate, Straw Hat." "So I've been told." Luffy laughed. "What do you say? Temporary partnership?" Nami looked down at the chart in her hands, then back at Luffy and Zoro. Against her better judgment, she found herself tempted. "I need to collect 100 million berries," she said finally. "If you can help me do that, I'll consider your offer." 100 million? Zoro whistled. "That's a lot of treasure." "It's important," Nami insisted. "More important than you know." Luffy stuck out his hand. "Deal. We'll help you get your money, you'll help us navigate. And along the way, I'll convince you that not all pirates are bad." After a moment's hesitation, Nami shook his hand. "Don't make promises you can't keep, Straw Hat." As they walked back toward the harbor, the few remaining townspeople emerged from hiding. They approached cautiously, having witnessed the confrontation with Buggy. "Is he gone?" an elderly man asked. "Buggy?" "For now," Luffy confirmed. "But you might want to contact the Marines just in case he comes back." The old man, apparently the mayor, straightened his spine. "You saved our town. How can we repay you?" Luffy's stomach growled loudly. "Food would be great." The townspeople laughed, the tension breaking. Soon, a small celebration formed in the square, with tables brought out and whatever food could be found shared among all. As they ate, Nami studied her new companions. "You're really serious about finding the One Piece, aren't you?" "Absolutely." Luffy confirmed through a mouthful of meat. "I promised Shanks I'd become a great pirate and return his hat someday." "And you?" Nami turned to Zoro. "What's your dream?" Zoro took a swig from his mug. "To become the world's greatest swordsman." "Big dreams," Nami mused. "The Grand Line isn't like East Blue. It's dangerous, unpredictable. And this boat you have won't make it past the entrance. So we need a better ship," Luffy nodded. "Any ideas?" Nami hesitated, then unfolded a map. "There's a village to the south called Syrup Village. Small place, but they have a shipwright. We could find something there. Then that's where we're headed next," Luffy declared. "After we eat, of course." As the impromptu feast continued, Luffy couldn't help but feel satisfied. In just a week, he had his first crew members, a swordsman and a navigator, even if she insisted it was temporary. They'd defeated 2 strong opponents and saved 2 towns. Not bad for the start of a journey, he murmured to himself, adjusting the straw hat on his head. Shanks would be proud. Little did he know that word of his victories was already spreading through East Blue. A boy in a straw hat who fought with unusual power and precision. A boy who wasn't a devil fruit user but somehow predicted attacks before they happened. A boy who had declared he would become king of the pirates. The Marines would soon take notice. And so would others, far more dangerous than Axehand Morgan or Buggy the Clown. But for now, Luffy ate and laughed with his new friends, eager for whatever adventure awaited them next. Chapter 2, Strength Without Shortcuts. The going merry creaked pleasantly as it cut through the waves. After their adventure in Syrup Village, where they'd acquired both a ship and a new crew member in the long-nosed sharpshooter Usopp, the newly formed Straw Hat Pirates sailed toward their next destination. Luffy sat cross-legged on Mary's figurehead, his special spot, while Zoro napped against the mast. Nami studied her charts at a small table she'd set up on deck, and Usopp tinkered with his latest invention, something he called flame stars, for his slingshot. "Hey Nami," Luffy called without looking back, "how much longer till we reach this floating restaurant you mentioned?" Nami glanced up from her maps. "The Baratai should be visible any time now. According to my information, it's permanently anchored in this part of East Blue. A restaurant that never moves," Usopp mused. "Seems like an easy target for pirates." Zoro cracked one eye open. "I heard the owner is an ex-pirate himself. Supposedly kicks the ass of anyone who tries to dine and dash." Luffy grinned, patting his stomach. "I can't wait. I'm starving." "You're always starving," Nami pointed out. "We just ate breakfast 2 hours ago." "Fighting makes me hungry," Luffy replied. "And we had that run-in with those weird guys in the cat ship yesterday." "The Black Cat pirates weren't exactly challenging," Zoro yawned. "Their captain talked a big game but couldn't back it up." "Still," Usopp interjected proudly, "if I hadn't come up with that brilliant plan to oil the slope, they might have overwhelmed us with numbers." Nami rolled her eyes. Yes, Captain Usopp, savior of Syrup Village. We've heard the story 15 times. Actually, it's 16 now," Zoro muttered. Usopp puffed out his chest. "Mock all you want, but, ship ahead." Luffy interrupted, jumping to his feet and pointing. "Is that it, Nami?" They all looked where he pointed. In the distance, a large ship shaped like a fish had appeared on the horizon. Even from this distance, they could see multiple decks and colorful awnings. "That's it," Nami confirmed. "The Baratai, East Blue's only floating restaurant. Food!" Luffy shouted joyously, nearly bouncing with excitement. As they drew closer, they noticed something else, a large marine ship anchored alongside the restaurant. "That's Lieutenant Fullbody's ship," Nami observed, frowning. "We should be careful." "Why?" Luffy asked. "We haven't done anything wrong. Except declare ourselves pirates," Zoro reminded him dryly. "That tends to attract marine attention." "And you guys have bounties," Usopp added nervously. "Well, Zoro does anyway." Luffy pouted. "I don't have a bounty yet." "What's a pirate king without a bounty?" "A pirate king who can eat at restaurants without getting arrested," Nami replied. "Consider yourself lucky." They navigated carefully, docking the Mary at a respectable distance from the marine vessel. As they prepared to board a small boat to ferry them to the restaurant, a commotion erupted on the Baraty's deck. A man in a marine uniform flew through the air, crashing into the railing before tumbling into the sea. Restaurant staff rushed to fish him out while a tall blonde man in a black suit stood in the doorway, dusting off his hands. "And stay out," the blonde shouted. "No one insults our food and gets away with it." "Is that, a chef throwing out a marine officer?" Usopp asked, jaw dropping. "Looks like it," Zoro grinned. "I think I'm going to like this place." Luffy laughed. "Let's go. I want to meet that chef." They rowed their dinghy to the Baraty's dock and climbed aboard. Inside, the restaurant bustled with activity. Elegantly dressed waiters served exquisite dishes to customers seated at tables draped with fine linens. A curved staircase led to a second level with more private seating. "Wow," Nami breathed, clearly impressed by the upscale atmosphere. "This place is fancy." "Welcome to the Baratai," a host greeted them. "Table for 4. "Yes please." Luffy replied enthusiastically. "And lots of meat." They were seated near a window with a view of the sea. As they perused their menus, Luffy kept craning his neck, trying to spot the blonde chef who'd thrown out the marine. "Looking for someone?" a smooth voice asked. They looked up to see the very man Luffy had been searching for, tall and lean with blonde hair covering one eye, dressed in an immaculate black suit. He held a notepad, clearly their server. You're the one who kicked that Marine's ass. Luffy exclaimed. That was awesome. The chef smirked. The shitty lieutenant insulted my seafood paella. Said he found a bug in it. He scoffed. As if I'd allow such contamination in my kitchen. You're a chef here? Nami asked. The blonde's demeanor instantly changed. His visible eye transformed into a heart shape as he twirled toward her. For you, mademoiselle, I am whatever you desire. Chef, server, devoted admirer, Sanji, at your service. He bowed deeply, presenting a rose that seemed to materialize from nowhere. Nami giggled, taking the flower. Well, Sanji-kun, what do you recommend today? For a beauty such as yourself, only the finest will do. Our Sea King carpaccio is exquisite, or perhaps the bluefin tuna sashimi. The fish arrived fresh this morning. While Sanji fawned over Nami, Luffy studied him with interest. Despite the chef's flirtatious behavior, Luffy noticed calluses on his hands and a particular stance that spoke of combat training. You're not just a chef, are you? Luffy asked bluntly. Sanji paused his flowery speech to Nami and turned to Luffy. What do you mean? You fight. And not just with your hands. Luffy pointed to Sanji's legs. You kicked that marine through the door. Most people punch when they're angry, but you kicked. That's your style, right? Something flickered in Sanji's visible eye, surprise, and perhaps respect. Perceptive, aren't you? Yeah, I fight with my legs. A chef's hands are his life. I'd never risk them in combat. Before Luffy could respond, a crash sounded from the entrance. A large man staggered in, clearly starving, his face gaunt and his clothes hanging off his frame. Food. The man groaned before collapsing. The restaurant patrons gasped and murmured. Some stood to look, while others backed away in disgust or fear. Jin. Sanji moved quickly, kneeling beside the fallen man. He checked his pulse, then called over his shoulder, he's starving. I need food, now. Don't feed that filth, a gruff voice bellowed. An enormous man with a peg leg and tall chef's hat stumped down the staircase. If he can't pay, he doesn't eat. He'll die, old man. Sanji argued. Not my problem. The older chef, clearly the owner from the way staff deferred to him, crossed his arms stubbornly. Sanji scowled, then hoisted the starving man over his shoulder. Fine. I'll handle it myself. He carried Jin toward the kitchen, ignoring the owner's shouts. Luffy watched the scene with interest. Who's the peg-leg guy? That's Red Leg Zeph, Nami whispered. Former pirate, now owner of this place. They say he was as feared as Gold Roger in his day. Red Leg? Luffy's eyes widened. The kicking pirate? The one who never used his hands in battle? Zoro raised an eyebrow. You know your pirate history. Gramps made me study famous pirates and marines, Luffy explained. Said if I was stupid enough to become a pirate, I should at least know who might kill me. Their conversation halted when Sanji returned, carrying a plate heaped with food. He disappeared through a side door, presumably to feed the starving man. Let's follow him, Luffy decided, standing up. What about our order? Usopp protested. This is more interesting. Luffy was already moving toward the door Sanji had used. Outside on a back deck, they found Sanji sitting with Jin, who devoured the food with desperate speed. Sanji smoked a cigarette, watching the man eat with satisfaction. No one should starve, Sanji said when he noticed the straw hats. Not while I can cook. Tears streamed down Jin's face as he ate. I haven't eaten in weeks, he managed between bites. Thank you. Thank you. Don't mention it, Sanji replied. Just eat. Luffy plopped down across from them. You're a good guy, Sanji. Join my pirate crew. Sanji nearly dropped his cigarette. What? I'm Monkey D. Luffy, future pirate king. These are my crew, Zoro, Nami, and Usopp. We need a cook, and you're perfect. You can't just ask people to join your crew out of nowhere. Nami scolded, though she seemed more resigned than surprised. Why not? That's how I got all of you, Luffy replied innocently. Sanji took a long drag from his cigarette. Sorry, but I can't leave this place. I owe the old man too much. The guy who didn't want you feeding Jin? Luffy asked, confused. It's complicated, Sanji muttered. Jin looked up, having finished his meal. Did you say Luffy? And Zoro? He studied them more carefully. You're pirates. Luffy grinned. Yep. The Straw Hat Pirates. Jin's expression darkened. You should avoid the Grand Line. I just came from there with my crew. It's a nightmare. Your crew? Zoro asked, suddenly interested. I'm the combat commander for Don Krieg's armada, Jin admitted. Or what's left of it. We entered the Grand Line with 50 ships and 5,000 men. We returned with one damaged ship and a handful of survivors. What happened? Usopp asked, horrified. A man, Jin whispered, eyes distant with terror. Just one man with a pair of hawk-like eyes. He sliced our ships like they were made of paper. We never even landed a single hit. Zoro stiffened. Hawkeye's my hawk. The world's greatest swordsman. You know him? Jin asked. I've been searching for him, Zoro replied, hand unconsciously moving to his white sword. He's the man I must defeat to fulfill my promise. Jin shook his head. You're insane. No one can beat that monster. Maybe, maybe not, Zoro said. But I have to try. Luffy watched this exchange with interest. The Grand Line sounded more exciting by the minute, especially if people like this Mihawk were waiting there. Where's Don Krieg now? Sanji asked Jin. Our ship is hidden nearby. He's too proud to come himself, but... Jin looked down at his empty plate. We're all starving. The men are dying. I came to find food, but I had no money. Sanji stood up and headed back inside. Wait here. Where's he going? Usopp wondered. They got their answer minutes later when Sanji returned with a large sack. Food for your captain and crew, he told Jin. Enough for 100 men. Jin stared in disbelief. But the owner doesn't need to know, Sanji finished. Now go, before he catches me. Jin accepted the sack with trembling hands. I won't forget this, Sanji. Don Krieg will repay your kindness. Something about the way he said it made Luffy uneasy. As Jin climbed into a small boat and rowed away, Luffy turned to Sanji. That was the right thing to do, he said. But I don't think Krieg is the type to say thank you. Sanji lit a new cigarette. Probably not. But it doesn't matter. No one deserves to starve. Why is that so important to you? Luffy asked. Before Sanji could answer, shouting erupted from inside the restaurant. The door burst open, and Zeff stormed out. You fed that pirate, didn't you? He demanded. After I explicitly forbade it. So what if I did? Sanji challenged. You gonna fire me, old man? I should kick your ungrateful ass. Zeff raised his peg leg threateningly. Luffy stepped between them. He did the right thing. Food is too important to withhold, even from enemies. Zeff's fierce gaze turned to Luffy. And who the hell are you? Monkey D. Luffy, future king of the pirates. Zeff's eyes widened slightly. Monkey D. Any relation to, Garp's my grandpa, Luffy confirmed. That explains the attitude, Zeff muttered. He studied Luffy more carefully. You're not a devil fruit user, are you? Nope. All natural. Luffy grinned, flexing an arm. Why? Something about you reminds me of a man I met once, in the Grand Line. Zeph stroked his braided mustache thoughtfully. Roger had that same look in his eyes. The deck fell silent. Comparison to Gold Roger himself was not made lightly, especially by someone who had presumably met the Pirate King. The moment was broken by a commotion at the front of the restaurant. Screams and crashes echoed from inside. Zeph cursed under his breath. Trouble, he growled, heading back in. They followed, emerging into chaos. The restaurant's front wall had been smashed open, and a massive galleon now loomed alongside the baratai. On the deck stood a large man in golden armor, surrounded by dozens of armed pirates. Don Krieg, Jin said from beside the armored figure. This is the restaurant I told you about. Krieg surveyed the baratai with cold eyes. Excellent. It will make a fine replacement for my destroyed flagship. What? Sanji pushed forward. We fed your men out of kindness, and this is how you repay us. Kindness? Krieg laughed. I don't recall asking for kindness. I take what I need. He turned to his men. Once you've eaten your fill, kill everyone except the cooks. We need them to prepare our meals on our journey back to the Grand Line. The starving pirates poured into the restaurant, devouring the food Sanji had prepared for them. As strength returned to their bodies, they drew weapons, advancing on the customers who fled screaming. Luffy stepped forward. That's enough. His voice wasn't particularly loud, but something about it made everyone pause. Even Krieg turned to look at the young man in the straw hat. You were given food when you needed it most, Luffy continued. That deserves gratitude, not betrayal. Krieg sneered. Who's this brat? Another cook. I'm Monkey D. Luffy, and I'm going to be king of the pirates. The pirates laughed, but Krieg studied Luffy more carefully. Big words from a skinny kid. You don't look like much. Appearances can be deceiving, Luffy replied evenly. Like how your armor looks impressive but probably isn't as strong as you think. Krieg's face darkened with anger. This armor is made of wood steel, the strongest in East Blue. Nothing can penetrate it. Want to test that theory? Luffy asked, cracking his knuckles. Luffy, Zoro cautioned, let me handle the small fry first. He nodded toward Krieg's men, who were spreading throughout the restaurant. And I'll help evacuate the customers, Usopp added with surprising resolve. Nami, come with me. Nami nodded, and the two hurried off to guide civilians to safety. Zoro drew his swords, facing the advancing pirates with a predatory grin. This place is important to the cook, Zoro said. Try not to break too much furniture, Captain. No promises, Luffy replied, eyes fixed on Krieg. Sanji moved to stand beside Luffy. This is my fight too. The shitty geezer and I have put everything into this restaurant. Krieg laughed again. 2 boys against the strongest pirate in East Blue. Your funeral. He raised a massive gun built into his armor. Die. A hail of bullets sprayed toward them. Sanji dove one way, Luffy another. The bullets tore through tables and chairs, sending splinters flying. My restaurant. Zeph bellowed from the staircase. Take it outside, you armored bastard. Perfect idea, Luffy agreed, dodging another volley. He sprinted toward Krieg, moving faster than the pirate could track, and delivered a powerful kick to his midsection. Despite the armor, Krieg staggered backward, crashing through the already damaged wall and onto the outer deck. Luffy followed, giving chase as Krieg retreated to his ship. Around them, battle erupted. Zoro cut down pirates with efficient precision while Sanji's powerful kick sent others flying. The Baraties chefs, apparently no strangers to combat, joined the fray with kitchen knives and heavy pans. Aboard Krieg's galleon, the pirate captain recovered his balance and glared at Luffy. Impressive strength for a runt. But let's see how you handle this. He detached a section of his armor, revealing a flamethrower built into the chest plate. Fire erupted toward Luffy, who barely had time to leap aside. The wooden deck burst into flames where he had stood. Careful! Luffy called to Zoro and Sanji, who had followed onto the ship. This guy's armor is full of weapons. Observant, Krieg sneered. This is the battle suit, ultimate offense and defense combined. No one has ever defeated me while I wear it. Luffy studied the armor, noting its weight and how it limited Krieg's movement. It's impressive, he admitted. But it has weaknesses. What weaknesses? Krieg demanded. Instead of answering, Luffy charged. Krieg fired another round of bullets, but Luffy seemed to anticipate the attack, weaving between the projectiles with uncanny precision. How are you dodging my attacks? Krieg shouted in frustration. I can sense them coming, Luffy replied, closing the distance. He landed a solid punch to Krieg's face, the only part not covered by armor. Blood spurted from the pirate's nose as he stumbled backward. Lucky hit. Krieg wiped the blood away and pressed a hidden switch on his gauntlet. Spikes extended from his armor, covering every surface. Try touching me now. Luffy paused, considering the challenge. The spikes made direct contact dangerous, but they also added weight and further restricted Krieg's mobility. Luffy! Sanji called from where he fought Krieg's officers. The deck panels. They're loose from the damage. Understanding dawned on Luffy's face. He stamped his foot hard on the deck, feeling the wooden planks shift beneath him. Thanks, Sanji, he shouted back. Good eye. What are you planning? Krieg demanded suspiciously. You'll see. Luffy began jumping up and down with increasing force. Each impact sent vibrations through the damaged ship. Cracks appeared in the deck as nails popped loose from the weathered wood. Stop that. Krieg charged forward, spikes gleaming in the sunlight. Luffy waited until the last moment before sidestepping. Krieg's momentum and the weight of his armor carried him forward, right as the deck gave way beneath him. The pirate captain crashed through, becoming wedged in the splintered hole, his spiked armor preventing him from easily pulling free. As I said, Luffy remarked casually, weaknesses. Krieg roared in fury, struggling to free himself. He managed to raise one arm, revealing yet another hidden weapon, a small hand cannon. Die, straw hat, he bellowed, firing a concentrated blast. Luffy sensed the attack coming but realized he couldn't fully dodge in the confined space of the ship's deck. Instead, he raised his arm instinctively. Something strange happened. As the blast struck his forearm, a shimmer of black seemed to flash across his skin. The impact still sent him skidding backward, but instead of tearing through flesh and bone, it left only a burn and bruise. Everyone who witnessed it froze momentarily, including Luffy himself. What was that? Sanji asked, pausing his fight. Zoro grinned through the blood on his face. Armament hockey. The old man's training is finally paying off. Luffy stared at his arm in wonder. Garp had described armament hockey, but this was the first time he'd manifested it physically. The ability to harden one's body, turning skin harder than steel, a power that could let him fight on equal terms with devil fruit users. Hockey? Krieg snarled. What trickery is this? Not trickery, Luffy replied, flexing his fingers as the black sheen faded. Just another way to become stronger. Renewed determination filled him. If he could tap into armament hockey, even unconsciously, it meant he was growing stronger. He might not have devil fruit powers, but he had something potentially more valuable. Krieg finally wrenched himself free from the hole, spikes snapping off his armor in the process. Whatever power you're using, it won't save you. I am Don Krieg, strongest in East Blue. Not anymore. Luffy moved forward with purpose, dodging the increasingly desperate attacks from Krieg's armor. Each weapon the pirate deployed, bullets, blades, bombs, Luffy evaded with growing ease. His observation haki was sharpening by the minute, allowing him to predict Krieg's moves before they happened. Finally, Luffy closed the distance. Focusing hard, he attempted to summon the black hardening to his fist deliberately. A partial coating appeared, not complete but enough for his purpose. Hawk Strike. Luffy's partially hardened fist collided with Krieg's chest plate. The impact rang like a gong across the water. For a moment, nothing happened, then Crack spiderwebbed across the supposedly impenetrable wood steel. Impossible! Krieg gasped as his armor shattered, pieces falling away to reveal his vulnerable body beneath. Luffy didn't hesitate. He followed with a barrage of punches, driving Krieg back until the pirate teetered at the edge of his broken ship. "This is for betraying Sanji's kindness," Luffy said, delivering a final, devastating uppercut that sent Krieg flying into the air before crashing down into the sea. Silence fell over the battlefield. Krieg's remaining men stared in shock at their defeated captain floating unconscious in the water. "Don Krieg, lost?" Jin whispered from where he had observed the battle, unwilling to fight either his benefactor Sanji or his captain Krieg. "Battles aren't decided by armor or weapons," Luffy said, turning to the remaining pirates. "They're decided by will." One by one, Krieg's men dropped their weapons. Some fell to their knees, while others simply stood in stunned silence. The fearsome Don Krieg, terror of East Blue, defeated by a young man with no devil fruit powers, no massive weapon, just his fists and determination. "What now, Captain?" Zoro asked, sheathing his bloodied swords. Luffy looked at the frightened pirates. "They're starving and desperate. Let's get them some food." "After they tried to steal our restaurant?" Sanji asked incredulously. "They followed a bad captain," Luffy replied. "Doesn't mean they deserve to starve." Sanji stared at Luffy for a long moment, then smiled. "You're an interesting guy, Straw Hat." Back at the Baratai, the damage was assessed. The restaurant had weathered the attack remarkably well, considering the violence of the battle. Zeph supervised repairs while Sanji, despite his earlier objections, prepared food for the defeated pirates. "So," Luffy said, perching on a barrel next to where Sanji worked, "about joining my crew." Sanji chopped vegetables with precise, rapid movements. "Still can't. Told you, I owe the old man." "What do you owe him?" Luffy pressed. Sanji's knife paused. "My life." Zeph stumped into the kitchen at that moment. "Stop slacking, Eggplant. We've got customers waiting." "I'm cooking as fast as I can, you shitty geezer." Sanji shot back. Luffy watched their interaction curiously. Despite the harsh words, there was obvious affection between them. "Hey, old man," Luffy addressed Zeph directly. "I want Sanji for my crew." Zeph snorted. "Take him. He's a pain in my ass anyway. You can't just give me away like used kitchen equipment." Sanji protested. "How long are you going to waste your life here?" Zeph demanded. "You have dreams beyond this restaurant, but you're too stubborn to pursue them." "I'm not leaving until I've repaid my debt to you," Sanji insisted. Zeph threw his hands up in exasperation. "The only debt you owe me is to follow your dream, idiot. I didn't save your scrawny ass so you could spend your life cooking for East Blue tourists." A tense silence filled the kitchen. Luffy looked between them, sensing a deeper story. "What is your dream, Sanji?" he asked softly. Sanji's hand stilled on his cutting board. "All blue," he murmured. "A legendary sea where fish from all four oceans gather. A chef's paradise." His voice grew stronger. "I'm going to find it someday." "The Grand Line is your best bet for finding this all blue," Luffy pointed out. "And that's where we're heading." Sanji resumed chopping, though slower now. "Even if I wanted to go, and I'm not saying I do, the old man needs me here. I managed this place before you washed up, and I'll manage after you leave, Zeph growled, but his eyes held something like pride. You've learned all I can teach you, Sanji. The internal struggle played out clearly on Sanji's face. Luffy waited, understanding that some decisions couldn't be rushed. Finally, Sanji set down his knife. If I go, he said slowly, who'll keep you from serving subpar food to these idiots? I trained you, remember? Zeph replied gruffly. My standards are higher than yours. A small smile tugged at Sanji's lips. We both know that's not true, old man. Zeph grunted, which might have been his version of affection. Sleep on it. But if you're staying just out of some misguided sense of obligation, I'll personally kick you onto that pirate ship. After Zeph left, Sanji turned to Luffy. Is finding the One Piece really your dream? Absolutely, Luffy confirmed without hesitation. I promised Shanks I'd become a great pirate and return his hat one day. Red-haired Shanks? Sanji asked, surprised. You know him? He saved my life when I was a kid. Luffy touched his straw hat reverently. This was his. He let me borrow it until I become a great pirate worthy of returning it. Sanji studied Luffy with new respect. You're full of surprises, Straw Hat. He turned back to his cooking. Let me finish serving these meals. We'll talk more tonight. Luffy rejoined his crew outside. The Krieg pirates had been given a spare ship from the Baradies collection, along with enough food for their journey home. Jin approached Luffy as they prepared to depart. I misjudged you, Straw Hat, the combat commander admitted. You're stronger than Don Krieg ever was, but you fight for better reasons. Join us instead, Luffy offered. We could use a guy like you. Jin shook his head, smiling sadly. My loyalty remains with my crew, even in defeat. But we won't forget what happened here. He extended his hand. If our paths cross again, I hope it's as friends, not enemies. Luffy shook the offered hand firmly. Same here. As the defeated pirates sailed away, Luffy turned his attention back to the Baratai. The sun was setting, casting golden light across the water and giving the fish-shaped restaurant an ethereal quality. Did you convince the cook to join us? Zoro asked, cleaning blood from his swords. Not yet, Luffy replied. But I will. Nami approached, looking oddly tense. Luffy, I need to talk to you. What's up? She glanced around nervously. Not here. In private. Concerned by her unusual behavior, Luffy followed her to a quiet corner of the deck. Nami pulled out a newspaper, pointing to an article. Arlong has moved into East Blue, she said, her voice tight with emotion. He's established his base at Konomi Islands. Arlong? The fishman pirate? Luffy frowned. Garp had mentioned him during his lessons, a dangerous bigot who hated humans. Yes, Nami's hands trembled slightly. Remember when I said I needed 100 million berries? It's to buy back my village from him. He's been terrorizing my home for years. Understanding dawned on Luffy's face. That's why you hate pirates. Because of him. Nami nodded, tears forming in her eyes. I've been stealing from pirates to accumulate enough money to free my people. I'm close, Luffy. So close. Then let's go, Luffy said simply. What? Let's go to your village and kick Arlong's ass. Nami stared at him. It's not that simple. Arlong is incredibly strong, a fishman with 10 times a human's strength. And he has dozens of fishman warriors with him. Luffy shrugged. So? We're strong too. You don't understand, Nami insisted. I've been working on this plan for 8 years. I can't risk everything on a direct confrontation. 8 years is too long to live under someone's boot, Luffy replied firmly. Trust your crew, Nami. Trust me. Before she could respond, Sanji emerged from the Baratai, carrying a large pack over his shoulder. He approached them with determined strides. "Room for one more?" he asked, setting down his pack. Luffy's face split into a wide grin. "You decided." "The old man and I had a long talk," Sanji admitted. "He's right, I'll never find all blue staying here." He glanced at Nami, noting her tear-stained face. "What's wrong? Why is the lovely Nami-san crying?" Briefly, Luffy explained the situation with Arlong. Sanji's expression hardened. "A beautiful lady in distress. That settles it. My first act as your crew's cook will be to help free Nami-san's village." "You don't have to," Nami began. "We want to," Luffy interrupted. "That's what crews do for each other." The following morning, the Straw Hat Pirates prepared to depart. Zeph and the Baratai staff gathered to see them off. "Don't get yourself killed, Eggplant," Zeph growled, though his eyes were suspiciously moist. "Worry about your own shitty self, old man," Sanji replied, his voice equally gruff with emotion. Zeph handed Sanji a small parcel. "Recipes," he explained. "For when you find all blue." Sanji accepted the gift with uncharacteristic reverence. Then, to everyone's surprise, he bowed deeply to his mentor. "Thank you for everything," he said sincerely. "I won't disappoint you." "You never have," Zeph replied quietly. With tearful goodbyes, mostly from the other chefs, behind them, the expanded Straw Hat crew set sail for Konomi Islands. Nami remained tense, constantly checking their course and the weather. "We should reach Kokoyashi village by tomorrow afternoon if the wind holds," she informed them, trying to sound businesslike despite her obvious anxiety. "Perfect," Luffy declared from his perch on Mary's figurehead. "Just enough time to prepare." "Prepare what?" Usopp asked nervously. "Please tell me we have a plan beyond, kick Arlong's ass." "Of course," Luffy replied cheerfully. "The plan is to kick Arlong's ass really well." Usopp groaned while Zoro chuckled. "Simple but effective." "We should at least know what we're up against," Sanji suggested, lighting a cigarette. "Nami-san, can you tell us more about these fishmen?" Nami hesitated, then nodded. "Fishmen are naturally 10 times stronger than humans. They can breathe underwater and swim faster than any ship. Arlong has a saw-shaped nose that he uses like a weapon, it can cut through stone." Her voice grew quieter. "He killed my mother when I was a child." A somber silence fell over the crew. "I'm sorry, Nami," Luffy said softly. "No wonder you hate pirates." "Not all pirates," she corrected, giving him a small smile. "Just the ones like Arlong." "We'll make him pay," Luffy promised, his usual carefree demeanor replaced by something harder, more focused. "All of us, together." That night, as the others slept, Luffy remained awake, staring at the stars from the deck. He heard soft footsteps and turned to see Nami approaching. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. She shook her head, leaning against the railing beside him. "Every time I close my eyes, I see my village. I'm afraid of what might happen." "We won't let anything happen to your home," Luffy assured her. "You don't know Arlong," Nami whispered. "He's cruel in ways you can't imagine." Luffy placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then tell me. Help me understand what we're facing." For the next hour, Nami opened up about her past, how Arlong had taken over her village, murdered her mother, and forced Nami to become his cartographer. How she'd struck a deal to buy back her village for 100 million berries. How she'd spent 8 years stealing from pirates to accumulate the sum. "I'm so close," she finished, tears streaming down her face. "Just a few more big scores, and I'd have had enough." "You don't need to buy your freedom," Luffy said firmly. "It belongs to you already. We'll help you take it back." Nami looked at him through her tears. "Why? You barely know me. I've made it clear I'm not really part of your crew." "But you are," Luffy replied simply. "Whether you admit it or not. And I protect my crew." The conviction in his voice left no room for doubt. Nami found herself believing him despite her fears. "Thank you, Luffy," she whispered. "Get some rest," he advised. "Tomorrow, we free your village." The following afternoon, the Going Merry approached Kokoyashi village. From a distance, they could see the imposing structure of Arlong Park, a multi-storied building resembling a pagoda with a massive pool at its center. "That's where he lives," Nami explained, pointing to the fortress-like building. "He keeps most of his fishmen there." "Good," Luffy cracked his knuckles. "Saves us the trouble of hunting them down." "We should dock away from the main harbor," Nami suggested. "If Arlong's men spot us, they might take hostages from the village." They anchored in a secluded cove, concealing the Merry among thick foliage. As they disembarked, Nami grew increasingly agitated. "Maybe I should go ahead," she suggested. "Tell them I've collected the money." "Will that work?" Sanji asked. Nami bit her lip. "No. I don't have all of it yet." "Then we stick together," Luffy decided. "Lead the way to your village, Nami." They followed a path through tangerine groves that Nami navigated with practiced ease. As they approached Kokoyashi village, they noticed the atmosphere of fear: shuttered windows, empty streets, and the few villagers they spotted hurried along with downcast eyes. "It's been like this for 8 years, Nami explained quietly. "Ever since Arlong took over." They reached a small house at the edge of the village. A woman with purple hair tended a garden outside, a pinwheel spinning cheerfully in her hat. "Nojiko!" Nami called, running forward. The woman looked up, shock and joy crossing her face. "Nami? Is that really you?" The sisters embraced tightly. When they separated, Nojiko noticed the straw hat standing awkwardly nearby. "Who are they?" she asked suspiciously. "Friends," Nami replied. "They've come to help." Nojiko's eyes widened. "Help? Nami, you know what happens to people who stand against Arlong." "We're not just people," Luffy interjected. "We're pirates." "Pirates?" Nojiko spat. "Like the ones who ruined our lives." "Not all pirates are the same," Nami said, surprising herself with the defense. "These ones are different." Before Nojiko could respond, shouts erupted from the village center. People ran past their house, heading toward the commotion. "What's happening?" Nami asked a passing villager. "It's Genzo. He's standing up to Arlong's men. They're going to kill him." Without hesitation, Luffy took off running toward the disturbance. The others followed, Nami calling after him frantically. In the village square, they found a man with stitches across his face confronting 3 fishmen. Despite being severely outmatched, he stood his ground defiantly. "We've paid your tribute this month," the man, presumably Genzo, shouted. "You have no right to demand more." One of the fishmen, a ray type with protruding teeth, laughed cruelly. "Arlong says different. The rate just went up. Pay or die, human trash." "I choose the third option," Luffy interrupted, stepping into the square. "You leave, now, and maybe we don't hurt you." The fishmen turned, startled by the newcomer. Their surprise turned to amusement as they took in the young man in the straw hat. "Look, boys. A volunteer for a beating." Rayface chortled. "Do you know who we are, human? We're officers of the Arlong Pirates. And I'm Monkey D. Luffy, the man who's going to be king of the pirates." The declaration silenced the square. Villagers exchanged confused glances while the fishman's amusement turned to anger. "You dare claim such a title in Arlong's territory?" Rayface snarled. "Die, human scum." He charged, webbed hand formed into a fist. Luffy didn't move until the last second, then sidestepped with casual ease. As the fishman stumbled past, Luffy delivered a precise chop to the back of his neck. Rayface crumpled unconscious. The other two fishmen froze, staring at their fallen comrade in disbelief. Anyone else? Luffy asked pleasantly. With a roar of rage, they attacked simultaneously. Luffy met them head-on, moving with speed that left the villagers gasping. His strikes were economical and devastatingly effective. Within seconds, all three fishmen lay unconscious in the dust. That was for threatening this village, Luffy said to their prone forms. Tell Arlong that Kokoyashi village is under my protection now. The villagers stared in stunned silence. Genzo approached Luffy cautiously. Who are you people? He asked. I told you, Luffy grinned. We're pirates. And Nami's our navigator. Nami? Genzo's eyes widened as he spotted her among the crew. You brought pirates here. Have you lost your mind? Gen-san, Nami stepped forward. These are friends. They want to help free the village from Arlong. Genzo shook his head vehemently. No. We can't risk it. You know what happened last time someone stood against him. Last time they didn't have us, Zoro interjected, hand resting on his white sword. You don't understand, Genzo began, but was interrupted by one of the fishmen regaining consciousness. Rayface staggered to his feet, blood trickling from his mouth. You're dead, he hissed at Luffy. All of you. When Arlong hears about this, when Arlong hears about what? A new voice boomed. The crowd parted fearfully as an imposing figure approached. Standing over 10 feet tall with blue-gray skin and a saw-shaped nose, Arlong the Saw made even his fishmen subordinates look small in comparison. Behind him marched a dozen more fishmen warriors. Captain Arlong. Rayface exclaimed. These humans attacked us. They claimed this village for themselves. Arlong's eyes narrowed as they fell on Luffy. A human challenging me in my own territory? How amusing. His gaze shifted to Nami, and his expression changed to one of possessive anger. Nami. What is the meaning of this? Who are these humans? Nami stepped forward, visibly trembling but determined. They're my crew, Arlong. Crew. Arlong's laughter boomed across the square. Have you forgotten our arrangement? You belong to me until you purchase this pathetic village. The arrangement is over, Nami declared. I'm not your cartographer anymore. I'm a straw hat pirate. Arlong's face contorted with rage. Ungrateful human. After I generously allowed you to buy back your freedom. He turned to his men. Kill them all. Except Nami, she needs to be reminded of her place. The fishmen surged forward, but the straw hats moved to intercept. Zoro's swords flashed in the sunlight, cutting down two fishmen before they could blink. Sanji's powerful kick sent others flying into buildings. Usopp, despite his fear, provided covering fire with his slingshot, disorienting the attackers with smoke and pepper stars. Luffy walked straight toward Arlong, ignoring the chaos around him. His focus remained absolute, his stride unhurried but purposeful. You're the one who killed Nami's mother, he stated flatly. Arlong sneered. Belmere? That human who couldn't pay her tribute. She chose death over slavery. Foolish, but her choice. No, Luffy replied, his voice hardening. You're the one who chose. You chose to be a tyrant. You chose to murder. You chose to enslave Nami. Enslave? Arlong laughed. I elevated her. A human with her cartography skills is a rare find. She should be grateful I recognized her talent. Talent you exploited, Luffy countered. Freedom you stole. They stood feet apart now, the human dwarfed by the fishman's massive frame. Yet something in Luffy's stance made even Arlong pause. You're not like other humans, Arlong observed. There's something different about you. I trained, Luffy replied simply. Because I have dreams worth fighting for. Just like Nami. Arlong's face darkened. Enough talk. Die, human. He lunged forward with frightening speed, his saw nose aimed at Luffy's heart. At the last possible moment, Luffy shifted aside, the attack missing him by millimeters. Too slow, Luffy commented. Arlong's eyes widened in surprise. He attacked again, faster this time, but Luffy continued to evade with seeming ease. Stop moving. Arlong roared in frustration. Why? Luffy asked, genuinely curious. So you can kill me easier. The taunt drove Arlong into a frenzy. His attacks became wilder, more desperate. Each miss further enraged the fishman, his movements becoming increasingly predictable to Luffy's observation haki. Around them, the battle raged between Straw Hats and fishmen. Despite being outnumbered, Luffy's crew was winning decisively. Zoro cut down opponents with surgical precision, while Sanji's kicks shattered fishman bones. Even Usopp had found his courage, using his slingshot to blind and disorient the enemy. Enough games. Arlong snarled. He reached down and ripped a chunk of concrete from the ground, hefting the massive weight easily. Let's see you dodge this. He hurled the improvised projectile at Luffy, who stood his ground. Focusing intensely, Luffy summoned his developing armament haki to his fist. The black coating spread more fully than before, covering his entire hand and part of his forearm. With a shout, Luffy punched the oncoming concrete. It shattered into dust and fragments, leaving him unharmed. Silence fell over the battlefield. Even Arlong stared in disbelief. What are you?" the fishman asked, a hint of fear entering his voice for the first time. "I told you," Luffy replied calmly. "I'm the man who's going to be king of the pirates." He examined his still blackened fist with interest. "And I'm getting stronger every day." Arlong backed away slightly. "Haki. You're using haki. But how? You're so young." "Good teachers," Luffy shrugged. "And lots of practice." Taking advantage of Arlong's momentary hesitation, Luffy charged forward. His haki-enhanced fist connected with Arlong's midsection, driving the air from the fishman's lungs. Arlong doubled over, gasping. Luffy followed with an uppercut that sent Arlong staggering backward. Before the fishman could recover, Luffy pressed his advantage, delivering a series of rapid blows to Arlong's chest and face. Despite the assault, Arlong was far from defeated. He caught one of Luffy's punches in his massive hand, grinning through bloodied teeth. "You're strong for a human," he admitted. But in water, fishmen reign supreme. With surprising strength, he hurled Luffy toward the nearby canal. Luffy twisted in mid-air, trying to redirect his trajectory, but splashed into the water nonetheless. "Luffy!" Nami screamed. Arlong laughed triumphantly. "Now the real fight begins." He dove into the water after Luffy. Underwater, Luffy found himself at a severe disadvantage. While he could swim, unlike devil fruit users who would have sunk like stones, he couldn't match a fishman's speed or maneuverability in their natural element. Arlong circled him like a shark, each pass coming closer. Luffy tried to swim toward the surface, but Arlong intercepted him, sending him deeper with a powerful blow. "This is where all humans belong," Arlong's voice somehow carried clearly underwater. "Beneath us." Luffy's lungs burned as he fought to hold his breath. He needed to get back to the surface, back to solid ground where he could fight effectively. An idea formed in his oxygen-deprived mind. As Arlong charged in for another strike, Luffy stopped resisting. Instead, he positioned himself in the fishman's path, arms spread wide. Confused by this seemingly suicidal move, Arlong hesitated momentarily, exactly what Luffy wanted. In that brief pause, Luffy grabbed Arlong's arm and pulled himself onto the fishman's back. "What are you doing?" Arlong thrashed, trying to dislodge his unwanted passenger. Luffy didn't respond, conserving his dwindling air. Instead, he wrapped his arms around Arlong's neck and squeezed with all his strength. It wasn't enough to choke the fishman, who could breathe underwater regardless, but it served as an effective distraction. Arlong spun and twisted, trying to shake Luffy off. In his panic, he instinctively swam upward, exactly where Luffy needed to go. They burst through the surface, Arlong roaring in rage and Luffy gasping for precious air. "Get off me, human filth!" Arlong bucked and twisted, finally dislodging Luffy, who landed with a splash several feet away. Luffy struggled to stay afloat, his energy depleted from the underwater battle. Arlong grinned, sensing victory. "Now I'll finish you," he declared, diving beneath the surface once more. Luffy treaded water, scanning the depths for any sign of approach. His observation haki, dulled by exhaustion, gave him only a split-second warning before Arlong rocketed upward, saw-nose aimed at Luffy's chest. With what strength remained, Luffy twisted aside. The saw grazed his ribs, drawing blood but missing vital organs. Luffy grabbed Arlong's head as he passed, using the fishman's momentum to propel himself toward the shore. Arlong crashed back into the water while Luffy landed painfully on the canal's edge. He staggered to his feet, clutching his bleeding side. "Luffy!" Sanji rushed to his captain's side. "Are you alright?" "Fine," Luffy panted. "Just need to catch my breath." "He's coming back," Zoro warned, pointing to the churning water. Arlong erupted from the canal, landing on the shore with predatory grace. Water streamed from his muscular blue form as he fixed Luffy with a hate-filled glare. "I'm impressed you survived," Arlong admitted. "But this ends now." To everyone's surprise, Luffy grinned. "Couldn't agree more." Despite his injury and fatigue, Luffy's stance changed. He planted his feet firmly, raising his fists in a classic boxing position that Garp had taught him years ago. "What's so funny, human?" Arlong demanded. "I figured out your weakness," Luffy replied. "You rely too much on your natural advantages, your strength, your teeth, your underwater abilities. But you never had to train like I did." "Train?" Arlong scoffed. "Why would the superior species need to train?" "To overcome limitations," Luffy answered. "To grow beyond what nature gave you." Something in his words struck a nerve. Arlong's face contorted with rage. "You dare suggest humans can surpass fishmen? Die!" He charged, faster and more ferocious than before. But Luffy was ready. Drawing on his years of training under Garp, the mountain bandits, and countless battles, Luffy met the assault head-on. Their exchange of blows became a blur of movement. Arlong's natural strength and razor teeth against Luffy's honed techniques and emerging haki. Blood flew from both combatants as they landed telling hits. The villagers and remaining fishmen watched in awe as human and fishman battled with increasing intensity. Neither seemed willing to yield, each driven by their own convictions, Arlong by his belief in fishman's superiority, Luffy by his promise to free Nami and her village. Finally, Luffy saw his opening. As Arlong lunged forward, teeth bared, Luffy sidestepped and grabbed the fishman's saw-nose. With a twist of his body, he used Arlong's momentum against him, flipping the much larger opponent over his shoulder and slamming him into the ground. Before Arlong could recover, Luffy straddled his chest and began focusing his haki into both fists. The black sheen spread more fully than ever before, covering both hands entirely. "This is for Nami," Luffy said, voice tight with controlled fury. "For her mother, for her village, and for her freedom." His haki-enhanced fists descended in a barrage of blows. Each impact cracked the ground beneath Arlong's head. The fishman's attempts to fight back grew weaker with each punishing strike. Shark! Frenzy! Barrage! Luffy shouted, his attacks accelerating to near-invisible speed. A final, devastating punch drove Arlong's head through the concrete, creating a small crater. The fishman lay still, unconscious but alive, his seemingly invincible reign ended by a human who refused to acknowledge limitations. Luffy stood slowly, breathing heavily. Blood dripped from his knuckles, some his, some Arlong's. He turned to face the stunned onlookers. Arlong Park and all it stands for is finished, he declared. Kokoyashi village is free. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. Then Nami stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. It's over? She asked, her voice small and disbelieving. Really over? Luffy nodded, his serious expression melting into his characteristic grin. Told you we'd kick his ass. A dam broke inside Nami. 8 years of suppressed hope, fear, and grief poured out as she collapsed to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. The villagers, equally overcome, began to cheer. Their shouts grew in volume as the reality sank in, they were free. Genzo approached Luffy, his scarred face wet with tears. How can we ever repay you? Luffy looked at Nami, still crying on the ground. Let her smile again. That's payment enough. In the days that followed, Kokoyashi village underwent a transformation. Marine Captain Izumi attempted to claim credit for Arlong's defeat, but found himself bound and shipped to Marine headquarters with evidence of his corruption after attempting to steal Nami's savings. The surviving fishmen were arrested, and Arlong Park was demolished stone by stone, the villagers dismantling the hated symbol of their oppression with joyous enthusiasm. Nami recovered the money she had painstakingly collected over 8 years, now unnecessary for its original purpose, but a testament to her determination and sacrifice nonetheless. The night before their departure, the Straw Hats joined Kokoyashi village for a massive celebration. Music played, food and drink flowed freely, and laughter filled the air for the first time in years. Luffy, predictably, dominated the feast, consuming enough food for 10 men. Zoro engaged the local men in drinking contests, while Sanji flirted shamelessly with every woman present. Usopp entertained children with outlandish tales of his adventures, growing bolder with each telling. Amidst the celebration, Nami sought out Luffy, finding him sitting alone on a dock, gazing at the stars. Not enjoying the party, she asked, sitting beside him. Just taking a break, Luffy patted his distended stomach. Even I have limits. Nami laughed, the sound lighter and more carefree than Luffy had ever heard from her. I've been thinking, she said after a moment's comfortable silence. About your offer. Oh. Luffy glanced at her, curious. To join your crew. For real this time, not just as a temporary navigator. Luffy grinned. You were always part of the crew, Nami. Even when you didn't want to admit it. She punched his arm lightly. Don't push it. Her expression grew more serious. But yes, I'd like to officially join the Straw Hat Pirates. If the offer still stands. Of course it does. Luffy declared happily. We can't find the One Piece without the best navigator in East Blue. Nami smiled, looking out at the moonlit water. I have a dream too, you know. To draw a map of the entire world, Luffy nodded. You mentioned it once. You remembered, Nami said, surprised. Of course. Crew members' dreams are important. They sat in companionable silence, watching the reflection of stars shimmer on the gentle waves. Thank you, Luffy, Nami said finally. Not just for defeating Arlong, but for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Luffy adjusted his straw hat, embarrassed by the sincerity in her voice. That's what captains do. The next morning, the Going Merry prepared to set sail. The entire village gathered at the harbor to see them off. Nojiko hugged her sister tightly, while Genzo tried and failed to look stern as he gave last-minute advice. Remember, the Grand Line is dangerous, he cautioned Nami. Don't take unnecessary risks. Says the man who stood up to fishmen with nothing but his pride, Nami teased, kissing his cheek. As they boarded the ship, Nami hesitated at the gangplank, looking back at her childhood home. For 8 years, her only thought had been freeing this village. Now that it was accomplished, a new journey awaited, one of her own choosing. Having second thoughts? Luffy asked, appearing beside her. Nami shook her head, smiling. Just saying goodbye properly this time. She raised her arm, revealing a new tattoo where Arlong's mark had once been, a pinwheel intertwined with a tangerine, symbols of her family and home. Nice, Luffy approved. Much better than that old one. With a final wave to the cheering villagers, Nami boarded the Mary. As they pulled away from the dock, she stood at the railing, watching Kokoyashi village recede into the distance. Next stop, Logue Town, she announced, her navigator's confidence fully restored. Last chance to stock up before the Grand Line. Logue Town. Luffy perked up. Where Gold Roger was born and executed. The very same, Nami confirmed. Interested in seeing it? Luffy's eyes gleamed with excitement. Absolutely. As the Mary sailed toward new adventures, Luffy returned to his special spot on the figurehead. The weight of Shanks' hat felt right on his head, a constant reminder of his promise and dream. Watch me, Shanks, he murmured to the horizon. I'm getting stronger every day. Logue Town loomed before them, a sprawling port city where the buildings grew taller the further inland they stretched. Ships from across the Four Blues crowded the harbor, their varied design speaking to the city's status as the last major stop before the Grand Line. The town of the beginning and the end, Nami read from her guidebook as they secured the Mary at the docks. Named because Gold Roger was born here and executed here. Fitting place to visit before we enter the Grand Line, Luffy remarked, eyes drinking in the bustling city with excitement. We should stick to business, Nami advised. We need supplies, equipment, and information about the Grand Line. Boring, Luffy groaned. I want to see the execution platform. Of course you do, Nami sighed. Fine, we'll split up. Sanji, can you handle the food supplies? Anything for you, Nami Swan. Sanji twirled enthusiastically. Usopp, you're on equipment duty. We need navigation tools, medical supplies, and anything else useful you can find. Usopp saluted. Leave it to Captain Usopp. I once outfitted an entire fleet with nothing but a broken fishing rod and, yeah, Nami cut him off. Zoro, you. She looked around. Where's Zoro? They realized the swordsman had already wandered off, likely lost within minutes of setting foot in the unfamiliar city. He'll be fine, Luffy waved dismissively. Zoro always turns up eventually. Usually in the middle of trouble, Usopp muttered. Nami handed out allowances from their funds. Meet back at the ship in 3 hours. And try not to cause trouble. The last part was directed pointedly at Luffy. No promises. Luffy grinned, already jogging toward the city center. See you later. Luffy wandered through Logue Town's crowded streets, marveling at the variety of shops and people. Unlike the smaller islands they'd visited, this city had a cosmopolitan feel, merchants from across the blues hawked exotic wares, and sailors speaking a dozen different dialects shared drinks and stories in open-air cafes. Following directions from friendly locals, Luffy made his way to the town square. There, rising above the crowd, stood the execution platform, a simple wooden structure that had witnessed the birth of the great pirate era. So this is where the Pirate King died, Luffy murmured, staring up at the platform with reverence. Without hesitation, he pushed through the crowd and began climbing the scaffold. People pointed and murmured as the young man in the straw hat scaled the historical monument with casual ease. At the top, Luffy stood where Gold Roger had once knelt. The view was spectacular, he could see across the entire town to the harbor and the sea beyond. Somewhere past that horizon lay the Grand Line, and beyond that, the new world where the One Piece waited. Hey, you, a voice shouted from below. Get down from there. That's a historical landmark. Luffy looked down to see a woman in a marine uniform glaring up at him, hands on her hips. Her dark hair and determined expression reminded him vaguely of his grandfather. Sorry, he called back, not sounding sorry at all. Just wanted to see the view. That platform is government property. Come down immediately or I'll arrest you. Arrest him anyway, Captain Tashigi, a deeper voice interjected. A tall man with white hair and a cigar stepped into the square. Anyone who wants to stand where Roger did has pirate written all over him. Luffy recognized the Marine from wanted posters Garp had shown him during training. You're Smoker, right? The Marine who uses smoke powers from a devil fruit. Smoker's eyes narrowed. You know me, but I don't know you. Identify yourself, boy. I'm Monkey D. Luffy, future king of the pirates. The declaration silenced the square. Citizens backed away nervously while Marine officers reached for weapons. Smoker's expression remained impassive, though a flicker of recognition crossed his face at the name Monkey. Any relation to Garp? He asked, casually removing the cigar from his mouth. He's my grandpa, Luffy confirmed. The hero's grandson wants to be a pirate. Ironic. Smoker cracked his knuckles. But family ties won't save you from justice. Before Luffy could respond, a new voice rang out, high-pitched and painfully familiar. The only one executing anyone here will be me, the great Captain Buggy. The crowd scattered as a familiar blue-haired pirate rose into the air, his body separated at the waist and floating above the square. Dozens of pirates poured in from side streets, surrounding the execution platform. Buggy? Luffy blinked in surprise. What are you doing here? Revenge, Straw Hat. Buggy cackled. You humiliated me in Orange Town. Now I'll execute you on the same platform where Gold Roger died. How's that for poetic justice? Luffy sighed, unimpressed. I'm kind of in the middle of something here. You won't be alive long enough to finish it. Buggy's hands detached, flying toward the platform with a set of shackles. Caught off guard by the aerial attack, Luffy found his wrists locked in steel restraints before he could react. Buggy's floating torso followed, landing on the platform beside him. Citizens of Logue Town. Buggy announced grandly. Today you witness history. The execution of Straw Hat Luffy by the great Captain Buggy. Below, chaos erupted. Marines led by Smoker attempted to disperse Buggy's crew, while civilians fled the impending violence. Smoker himself transformed partially into smoke, rising toward the platform only to be intercepted by another familiar face, Alvida, now slimmer and wielding a massive iron club. Not so fast, Marine, she purred. Buggy and I have an arrangement. Luffy, a voice called from the edge of the square. Zoro, Sanji, and Usopp had arrived, fighting their way through Buggy's men toward the platform. Guys! Luffy called back. Little help. Buggy laughed maniacally, raising a sword above Luffy's restrained neck. Too late, Straw Hat. Any last words before I send you to meet Roger? Despite his predicament, Luffy remained calm. He closed his eyes briefly, focusing his awareness. When he opened them again, he smiled broadly. Yeah, I do have something to say, he announced, voice carrying across the now silent square. I am going to be king of the pirates. The declaration rang out, clear and unafraid. Even Buggy paused, startled by the absolute conviction in Luffy's voice. Brave words for a dead man, Buggy sneered, recovering. He raised the sword higher. Die with your dreams, Straw Hat. The blade began its descent toward Luffy's neck. Time seemed to slow. Below, Zoro and Sanji fought desperately to reach him, but they were too far. Smoker battled Alvida, his smoke powers neutralized by her slippery abilities. Usopp aimed his slingshot, but hesitated, afraid of hitting Luffy. In that moment of mortal peril, something awakened fully in Luffy. The nascent haki that had been growing since his battle with Krieg and Arlong suddenly expanded. A wave of invisible force erupted from his body, radiating outward like a shock wave. Across the square, weaker consciousnesses flickered and failed. Buggy's crewmen collapsed unconscious. Civilians staggered, disoriented. Even Buggy himself froze mid-swing, eyes rolling back as he toppled from the platform. Conqueror's haki, Smoker whispered, one of the few remaining standing. Impossible. Luffy blinked, surprised by what had happened but not questioning his good fortune. Taking advantage of Buggy's unconscious state, he focused his armament haki into his wrists. The metal shackles, unable to withstand the pressure, cracked and fell away. Free once more, Luffy jumped down from the platform, landing lightly beside his stunned crewmates. What just happened? Usopp asked, staring at the unconscious pirates littering the square. No idea, Luffy admitted. But we should probably go. Now. Smoker had recovered from his shock and was advancing, his expression a mixture of disbelief and determination. Monkey D, Luffy, he called. By the authority of the world government, I place you under arrest. Sorry, no time. Luffy grabbed Usopp by the collar. Run. They fled through Logtown's winding streets, Smoker in hot pursuit. Despite his devil fruit advantage, the Marine captain found Luffy surprisingly difficult to catch. The young pirate's observation haki gave him just enough warning to avoid Smoker's smoke attacks, ducking down alleys and through buildings with uncanny timing. We need to get back to the Mary. Nami shouted, having joined them during the chase. A storm's coming. Of course it is, Zoro muttered, deflecting a Marine's sword strike without breaking stride. Perfect timing. Rain began to fall as they neared the harbor. Behind them, Smoker gained ground, his smoke form unhindered by physical obstacles. You can't escape, Straw Hat, the Marine called. No pirate has ever gotten past me in Logtown. There's a first time for everything. Luffy called back cheerfully. As they reached the docks, the storm intensified dramatically. Wind howled through the rigging of anchored ships, and lightning split the sky in brilliant forks. The Mary bucked against her moorings, eager to be away. Everyone board. Luffy ordered, helping Nami onto the heaving deck. Cut the lines. Zoro slashed through the mooring ropes with a single sweep of his sword. The Mary immediately began drifting from the dock, pushed by the strengthening wind. You're not going anywhere. Smoker materialized at the end of the dock, his smoke body stretching toward the departing ship. Tendrils of white vapor wrapped around Luffy's torso, dragging him back toward land. He struggled, but found no purchase against the insubstantial bonds. Let me go, he demanded, trying to summon his armament haki to combat the devil fruit power. Justice doesn't bend to the whims of pirates, Smoker replied grimly, pulling harder. Lightning crashed nearby, momentarily blinding everyone. When vision cleared, a cloaked figure stood on the dock beside Smoker. Sometimes justice must step aside, the newcomer said, his voice deep and commanding. The time is not yet right. Dragon. Smoker's voice held rare surprise. The revolutionary. The cloaked man said nothing more, but a gust of wind, too directed to be natural, suddenly tore through the harbor. It broke Smoker's smoke hold and pushed the Mary rapidly out to sea. Thanks, whoever you are. Luffy called back, waving gratefully. The mysterious figure raised a hand in acknowledgement before turning to face the irate Marine captain. Soon, Logtown disappeared behind them, swallowed by the storm and distance. The Mary rode the turbulent waters skillfully, Nami's expert navigation keeping them on course despite the tempest. That was too close, Usopp gasped, clinging to the mast as waves crashed over the deck. Who was that guy who helped us? No idea, Luffy replied, securing loose items that threatened to wash overboard. But he had perfect timing. Speaking of timing, Nami called from the helm, brace yourselves. We're approaching the entrance to the Grand Line. Through the curtain of rain, they could make out the looming silhouette of Reverse Mountain, the impossible upward-flowing current that served as the primary entrance to the Grand Line. We need to hit the entrance precisely. Nami shouted over the howling wind. Everyone to stations. Despite their exhaustion from the Logtown escape, the crew moved with practiced coordination. Sanji and Usopp managed the sails while Zoro secured the rudder. Luffy stood at the bow, eyes fixed on the mountain ahead. There. Nami pointed to a narrow gap in the rock face. The entrance channel. Zoro, 10 degrees starboard. The Mary adjusted course, aiming for the seemingly impossible target, a river flowing up a mountain. As they hit the current, the ship lurched violently, nearly throwing them overboard. Then, defying all normal laws of nature, the Mary began to climb. "We're going up!" Usopp cried in disbelief as the ship accelerated along the ascending channel. "The currents here converge from all four blues," Nami explained, clinging to the railing. "They're forced up the mountain and then down the other side into the Grand Line." The Mary shot upward at increasing speed, the force pressing the crew against the deck. Rain and sea spray blinded them as they rocketed toward the summit. "This is amazing!" Luffy laughed, the danger only adding to his excitement. They crested the peak in an explosion of water and momentum. For a breathless moment, the Mary seemed suspended in mid-air, offering a brief glimpse of the vast sea that awaited them, the legendary Grand Line. "There it is," Luffy said softly, or replacing his usual exuberance. "The Sea of Adventures." Then gravity reclaimed them, and the Mary plunged down the far side of Reverse Mountain. The descent was even faster than the climb, the ship practically flying down the water channel. "Hold on tight!" Nami screamed as they approached the bottom. "The landing will be rough." The Mary hit the Grand Line waters with a massive splash, nearly capsizing from the impact. Through skill and luck, they maintained their orientation, the ship righting itself in the suddenly calm waters beyond Reverse Mountain. "We made it," Sanji breathed, lighting a cigarette with shaking hands. "We're actually in the Grand Line. Is everyone okay?" Luffy called, checking his nakama. Affirmations came from all, though Usopp looked slightly green from the wild ride. As the storm clouds parted, revealing a starlit sky, a sense of accomplishment washed over the crew. "We should celebrate," Luffy declared. "Sanji, break out the special food." "I prepared something for this moment," Sanji acknowledged, heading for the galley. While he gathered provisions, the others assembled on deck. Nami brought out a barrel and placed it in their midst. "A Grand Line tradition," she explained. "Each crew member places a foot on the barrel and makes a vow about their dream." Luffy went first, placing his foot firmly on the wooden lid. "I vow to become the king of the pirates." Zoro followed. "I vow to become the world's greatest swordsman." "I vow to draw a map of the entire world." Nami declared. "I vow to become a brave warrior of the sea." Usopp added, his voice steadier than usual. Sanji completed the circle. "I vow to find the all blue." Together, they raised their legs and brought them down simultaneously, breaking the barrel in a symbolic commencement of their Grand Line adventure. As they feasted under the stars, a deep, haunting cry echoed across the water. The sound was unlike anything they'd ever heard, part whale song, part mournful wail. "What is that?" Usopp asked nervously. Luffy moved to the railing, peering into the darkness. A massive shape loomed in the water ahead, a mountain that hadn't been there moments before. "The mountain's moving," he observed. "That's not a mountain," Nami realized with growing horror. "It's a whale. The biggest whale I've ever seen." The behemoth rose further from the waves, revealing an enormous eye larger than the Mary herself. Scars crisscrossed its head, suggesting previous violent encounters with ships. "We're going to crash." Usopp panicked as the Mary continued toward the living obstacle. "Everyone, hard to port," Nami ordered, but it was too late. The Mary's momentum carried them straight toward the whale's side. Thinking quickly, Luffy ran to the ship's cannon. "Sorry about this," he muttered, lighting the fuse. The cannon fired, the impact enough to slow their approach but not stop it completely. The Mary's figurehead snapped off as they collided with the whale's flank. Strangely, the whale showed no reaction to either the cannon or the collision. It continued its mournful song, seemingly unaware of their presence. "Why isn't it responding?" Sanji wondered. Luffy, upset about damage to his precious ship, acted impulsively. He drew back his fist and struck the whale's massive eye. Hey! Pay attention when someone hits you. That got a reaction. The giant eye swiveled toward them, focusing with surprising intelligence. The whale opened its mouth, and before they could react, swallowed the entire ship. Darkness enveloped them as they slid down the whale's massive throat. The Mary bobbed in digestive fluids, carried deeper into the creature's body. He ate us. Usopp wailed. We're going to be digested. Stay calm, Nami ordered, though her voice trembled slightly. There must be a way out. To their astonishment, light appeared ahead. As they drifted closer, they realized they weren't in a typical whale's anatomy. Instead, the Mary floated on what appeared to be an inland sea beneath a painted sky, complete with clouds and a miniature island. What is this place? Zoro muttered, hand on his swords. Someone's been busy with interior decorating, Sanji remarked dryly. On the island stood a small house. As they watched, an elderly man emerged, carrying a newspaper and seemingly unsurprised by their presence. Visitors, the old man observed. It's been a while. Hey! Luffy called. Are we inside the whale? Who are you? How do we get out? The old man ignored the questions, settling into a lawn chair and opening his newspaper. His deliberate rudeness provoked Luffy's notorious impatience. Answer me. Luffy demanded. Or I'll come over there and make you. The old man lowered his paper. Threats won't work here, boy. I've faced far worse than you. Before Luffy could respond, the sky rippled, revealing its nature as a painted ceiling. The entire chamber shook violently, sending waves across the artificial sea. What's happening? Nami cried, clinging to the railing. Laboon is ramming the red line again, the old man sighed. He's been at it for 50 years. Laboon? The whale has a name? Usopp asked. Of course he has a name, the old man replied irritably. He's not just any whale. He's an island whale who's been waiting for his pirate friends to return from the Grand Line for half a century. The old man introduced himself as Crocus, caretaker of both the lighthouse at Twin Cape and Laboon the whale. Over tea, which he finally agreed to share after Luffy's persistent demands, he explained Laboon's tragic history. A pirate crew left him here while they journeyed into the Grand Line, promising to return. They never did. Crocus's eyes held decades of sadness. I've tried to tell him they're not coming back, but he refuses to believe it. So he rams the red line, thinking it's blocking their return. Luffy absorbed this story with uncharacteristic quietness. He's been waiting 50 years for friends who abandoned him. They may not have abandoned him willingly, Crocus allowed. The Grand Line is merciless. They likely perished. Still, Luffy's expression hardened. They made a promise. After showing them the exit through a series of canals in Laboon's body, Crocus helped guide the Mary back to open water. Once outside, they got their first proper look at Laboon, an island whale of truly staggering proportions, his head bearing the scars of countless impacts with the red line. Luffy studied the whale thoughtfully. Then, without warning, he raced up Laboon's side and delivered a powerful punch directly to one of the whale's healing wounds. Luffy, his crew cried in unified horror. Laboon's eye swiveled to focus on this new tormentor. With a bellow of rage, he reared back, preparing to crush the tiny human. What are you doing? Crocus shouted. He'll kill you. But Luffy stood his ground, meeting the whale's gaze without fear. Your friends aren't coming back, he stated plainly. But I understand waiting for a promise. Laboon paused, something in the young man's words reaching through decades of grief and rage. I make you a new promise, Luffy continued. My crew and I will circumnavigate the Grand Line. And when we do, we'll come back here. Then we'll have a rematch to see who's stronger. Laboon remained still, his massive eye fixed on Luffy. Until then, Luffy grinned, you have to stop hurting yourself. Those scars won't impress me when I return. To everyone's amazement, the whale gave a low, understanding rumble. Tears welled in his enormous eye, the first sign of acceptance in 50 years. To seal their pact, Luffy borrowed paint from Crocus and drew a crude version of the Straw Hat Jolly Roger across Laboon's head. There. Now you can't ram the red line without ruining my mark. It's our promise to each other. Laboon's happy cry echoed across Twin Cape, a sound of hope replacing decades of sorrow. As they prepared to continue their journey, Crocus provided them with crucial information about the Grand Line's unique navigation challenges. Normal compasses don't work here, he explained, handing Nami a strange wrist-mounted device. You need a log pose. It locks onto an island's magnetic field, then resets to point to the next one. So we follow a specific route? Nami asked, examining the unusual instrument. There are 7 possible routes from here, Crocus confirmed. Each presents different dangers. Once you choose a path, you're committed until you reach Raftel, if you survive that long. Which route did Gold Roger take? Luffy asked immediately. Crocus smiled mysteriously. Who can say? I wouldn't know such things. Something in his tone made Luffy study the old lighthouse keeper more carefully. You knew him, didn't you? You were on his crew. The crew gasped at this deduction, while Crocus's smile deepened. Perceptive for a rookie, he acknowledged. But that's a story for another time. You have your own journey to begin. With the log pose calibrated to their first destination, Whiskey Peak, the Straw Hats bid farewell to Crocus and Laboon. As they sailed away, Luffy stood at the stern, watching Twin Cape recede into the distance. We'll be back, he promised quietly. That's what real pirates do, they keep their word. The journey to Whiskey Peak proved strangely uneventful, almost suspiciously so. They arrived at a welcoming island where the citizens threw them a massive celebration, honoring them as pirates brave enough to enter the Grand Line. This is great! Luffy exclaimed between mouthfuls of food. Grand Line people really know how to party. Only Zoro remained suspicious, pretending to drink while staying alert. His caution proved warranted. The citizens were actually bounty hunters belonging to Baroque Works, an organization they learned was led by the Shichibukai crocodile. After Zoro defeated the disguised agents, they encountered a mysterious woman called Miss All Sunday, Crocodile's partner who revealed herself to be Robin. Rather than fighting them, she provided cryptic warnings and a spare eternal pose to Alabasta, suggesting they skip the dangers of Little Garden. Why would you help us? Nami asked suspiciously. Perhaps I'm bored, Robin replied enigmatically. Or perhaps I'm curious to see how far the boy with no devil fruit but growing haki can go in this sea of monsters. Luffy, displaying his typical disdain for outside interference, crushed the eternal pose. Don't tell us where to go. Our adventure, our choices. Robin smiled, apparently amused rather than offended. Interesting. I look forward to seeing if that attitude keeps you alive. She departed as mysteriously as she had arrived, leaving the crew with more questions than answers. Their next destination, Little Garden, lived up to its ironic name. The prehistoric island teemed with dinosaurs and giants, providing Luffy with exactly the kind of adventure he craved. This place is amazing, he shouted, riding atop a Diplodocus he'd somehow befriended. Look how big everything is. Their stay on Little Garden introduced them to the giants Dory and Broggy, whose century-long duel impressed even Zoro. It also brought another encounter with Baroque Works agents, who attempted to eliminate the Straw Hats through treachery rather than direct confrontation. Mr. 3, a wax power user, nearly succeeded in turning the crew into wax statues for his macabre art collection. Only Luffy's growing haki awareness allowed him to sense the trap in time, leading to a confrontation that pushed his abilities further. Your wax might be hard as steel, Luffy told Mr. 3 as his fist began to darken with armament haki, but I'm learning to break things harder than that. The partially hardened punch shattered Mr. Three's wax armor, sending the agent flying into the jungle. His partner, Miss Goldenweek, fled rather than face the increasingly formidable pirate captain. With the giant's help, the Straw Hats collected the supplies they needed and set their log pose for the next island. As they departed, Dory and Broggy stood on the shore, their massive forms silhouetted against the setting sun. "Remember, little humans," Dory called, his voice carrying across the water, "in the Grand Line, strength alone isn't enough. Pride without wisdom leads only to an early grave. And friendship," Broggy added, "can overcome obstacles no individual could face alone." Luffy waved enthusiastically. "We'll remember. See you in Elbaf someday." As Little Garden disappeared behind them, the crew gathered on deck to discuss their experiences and the challenges ahead. The Grand Line had already tested them in ways East Blue never had, forcing growth and adaptation. "We need to get stronger," Zoro observed, cleaning dinosaur blood from his swords. "Those Baroque Works agents were tougher than most East Blue opponents, and they're just the beginning. Especially if we're heading toward a confrontation with a Shichibukai," Sanji added, lighting a cigarette. "Crocodile won't be easily defeated." Nami consulted her maps and the log pose. "Our next stop is Drum Island. After that, Alabasta, where Crocodile has apparently incited a civil war. Why would a Shichibukai want to destroy a kingdom?" Usopp wondered. "Power," Luffy said simply. "That's always what it comes down to with guys like him." The crew looked at their captain with surprise. Sometimes Luffy's insights cut through complications with unexpected clarity. "Whatever his reasons," Luffy continued, punching his palm decisively, "if he's hurting innocent people, we'll stop him." As night fell over the Grand Line, the Straw Hat Pirates continued their journey, unaware of how soon their resolve would be tested. Ahead lay islands of snow and sand, new friends and powerful enemies. The path to becoming Pirate King grew more dangerous with each passing day, but Luffy's determination never wavered. Without the advantages of a devil fruit, he relied on his growing haki, his natural strength, and most importantly, the bonds with his crew. In a sea where the supernatural was commonplace, Monkey D. Luffy was proving that human potential, properly honed, could be the most formidable power of all. Chapter 3, The Will to be King. The wind howled across the deck of the Going Merry, carrying snow and ice that bit into exposed skin like tiny daggers. Luffy stood at the helm, squinting through the blizzard while Sanji wrapped another blanket around Nami's shivering form below deck. "How is she?" Luffy called down the hatchway, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "Not good," Sanji replied, his usual flirtatious demeanor replaced by genuine concern. "Her fever's getting worse. We need a doctor, and fast." 3 days earlier, Nami had collapsed while charting their course to Alabasta. What started as a slight fever had rapidly intensified into something far more serious, a tropical disease that turned her skin pale and left her alternating between burning fevers and violent chills. "Land ahead!" Usopp shouted from the crow's nest, his voice barely audible over the storm. "An island." "About damn time," Zoro muttered, brushing accumulated snow from his shoulders. "Hope they have a doctor." They navigated carefully through treacherous ice floes, finally reaching a snow-covered harbor. As they prepared to dock, movement on the shore caught their attention. Dozens of people had gathered, but rather than the welcoming committee they hoped for, these villagers aimed rifles and spears at the approaching ship. "Pirates aren't welcome here," a bearded man shouted. "Turn around now if you value your lives." Luffy stepped to the railing. "We have a sick person on board. We need a doctor." "Your tricks won't work," another villager yelled. "Leave immediately." "This isn't going well," Usopp whispered nervously. "Maybe we should find another island." "There isn't time," Sanji emerged from below deck. "Nami-san might not survive another day at sea." Luffy made his decision. He leapt from the Merry onto the snowy shore, landing in a crouch before straightening to face the armed villagers. Several rifles swung toward him, but he didn't flinch. "My navigator is dying," he said simply. "I don't care if you hate pirates. I don't care if you shoot me. But she needs help, and I'm not leaving until she gets it." The sincerity in his voice gave the villagers pause. Before they could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. "Lower your weapons, everyone. They're telling the truth." The crowd parted to reveal a tall woman with short dark hair, wearing a sheepskin coat. Despite the villagers' obvious respect for her, she didn't appear to be their leader. "I'm Dr. Kureha's assistant," she introduced herself. "Bring your sick friend to the village. I'll examine her there." Relief flooded Luffy's face. "Thank you. Sanji, bring Nami." The blonde cook carefully carried Nami's bundled form down the gangplank, her face flushed with fever against the stark white of the snow. The woman examined Nami briefly, her expression growing grave. "Kestia fever. Rare but deadly if untreated. She must have been bitten by a bug on a prehistoric island." "Little garden," Usopp realized. "We were just there. She'll need Dr. Kureha's expertise," the woman continued. "Unfortunately, the doctor lives at the castle on the mountain." She pointed to a towering peak that disappeared into the clouds above. "And she rarely comes to the village." "Then we'll take Nami to her," Luffy declared, already planning the climb in his head. "Impossible," an elderly villager interjected. "That mountain is unclimbable in this weather. The slopes are sheer ice, and the snow wolves hunt in packs. You'd never make it." Luffy's expression didn't change. "Watch me." The villagers provided what help they could: warm clothes, directions to the mountain path, and warnings about the dangers. As Luffy prepared to carry Nami, the woman who had first helped them approached. "My name is Dalton," she said quietly. "I should tell you something about this island. Until recently, we were ruled by a tyrant king named Wapol. He fled when pirates attacked, abandoning his people." "What's that got to do with us?" Zoro asked. "Nothing, perhaps," Dalton replied. "Except Wapol was last seen heading back in this direction. If he returns while you're on the mountain, we'll deal with him if we have to," Luffy assured her. "Right now, Nami's what matters." They fashioned a sled to carry Nami through the deep snow. Luffy would pull it while Sanji accompanied him. The cook had flatly refused to let his Nami Swan out of his sight. Zoro and Usopp would remain with the ship, protecting it from potential threats. As they departed, villagers called final warnings about the mountain's dangers. Luffy simply adjusted his straw hat, secured beneath a warm cap, and began trudging through the knee-deep snow. The first hour of their journey passed without incident. The path, though steep, remained relatively clear. Nami drifted in and out of consciousness on the sled, her breathing increasingly labored. "Her fever's still rising," Sanji reported worriedly after checking on her. "We need to move faster." Luffy nodded grimly and increased his pace, his legs pumping powerfully through the deepening snow. Despite the biting cold, sweat beaded on his forehead from exertion. The path grew steeper, transitioning from snow to treacherous ice. What had been a difficult hike became a precarious climb. Without rubber limbs to stretch and anchor himself, Luffy relied on raw strength and determination, hauling the sled up near vertical sections with Sanji helping from behind. "Careful!" Sanji warned as Luffy's foot slipped on a hidden ice patch. "One wrong step and we all go down." Luffy regained his footing, breathing hard. "I won't fall. Nami's counting on us." Halfway up the mountain, the snowstorm intensified. Visibility dropped to mere feet, and the temperature plummeted. Ice formed on their eyelashes and in Luffy's nostrils as he breathed. "We should find shelter," Sanji shouted over the howling wind. "Wait out the worst of the storm." "No time," Luffy called back. "Keep moving." A haunting howl echoed through the blizzard, followed by another, then several more. Red eyes appeared in the swirling snow around them, the snow wolves Dalton had warned about. Perfect timing, Sanji muttered, moving into a defensive stance. The wolves attacked from all sides, massive white-furred predators adapted to the mountain's harsh conditions. Sanji's kicks kept them at bay while Luffy continued pulling the sled, one arm free to fight off any wolves that got past the cook. "There's too many," Sanji shouted as more wolves joined the pack. "We can't fight and climb at the same time." Luffy stopped, surveying their situation. The wolves circled hungrily, waiting for an opening. Behind them lay the treacherous path they'd already conquered, ahead loomed the even more challenging upper slopes. Nami moaned softly from the sled, reminding him of the stakes. "New plan," he decided. "You take Nami the rest of the way. I'll handle the wolves." "Are you insane?" Sanji protested. "There must be 30 of them." 32, Luffy corrected casually. "I've been counting. Now go." Before Sanji could argue further, Luffy stepped away from the sled and faced the wolf pack. Something in his stance made even the predators hesitate. "I said go," Luffy repeated, not looking back. "Get her to the doctor." Seeing no alternative, Sanji grabbed the sled's rope and continued upward. The wolves immediately tried to pursue, but Luffy intercepted them. "Your fight's with me," he told the creatures, as if they could understand. Perhaps they did understand, on some primal level, that this human represented a threat unlike any they'd encountered before. The largest wolf, presumably the alpha, charged first. Luffy met it head-on, delivering a precise strike to its muzzle that sent it tumbling back through the snow. The pack attacked en masse after that. Luffy fought with controlled fury, each movement economical and purposeful. He couldn't waste energy with flashy techniques in these conditions. Every punch and kick needed to count. His observation haki warned him of attacks from his blind spots, allowing him to pivot and counter wolves leaping at his back. When 4 attacked simultaneously, he allowed his armament haki to flow into his arms, the dark sheen spreading further than ever before, covering both forearms completely. Hawk Strike, Winter Flurry. Luffy unleashed a barrage of haki-enhanced punches that scattered the wolves like ninepins. The remaining predators retreated a safe distance, watching him warily. The alpha limped forward again, but this time it wasn't attacking. It locked eyes with Luffy in what seemed almost like respect before turning away. The pack followed, disappearing into the blizzard as quickly as they had come. Luffy allowed himself a brief moment to catch his breath before continuing up the mountain after Sanji and Nami. The fight had cost him precious time and energy, and the worst of the climb still lay ahead. The upper third of the mountain proved nearly vertical in places. Ice coated every surface, making each handhold treacherous. The wind screamed around him, threatening to tear him from the mountain's face. Without rubber powers to stretch and grab distant anchoring points, Luffy relied on raw strength and stubborn will, digging fingers into ice until they bled, then ignoring the pain to reach for the next hold. Almost there, he gasped, seeing the looming silhouette of the castle above. "Hold on, Nami." A final, nearly vertical ice wall separated him from his goal. In his exhausted state, even Luffy's tremendous strength might not be enough. He closed his eyes briefly, focusing inward as Garp had taught him. Haki comes from will, his grandfather had explained years ago. When your body fails, your will can carry you further. Luffy opened his eyes, a new determination flowing through his aching muscles. He began to climb the impossible wall, each movement deliberate and certain. Halfway up, his foot slipped on the glassy ice. Instead of panicking, he channeled armament haki to his fingers, the blackened digits digging into the ice like steel pitons. With a final, explosive effort, he pulled himself over the edge and collapsed onto the castle plateau, gasping for breath. Ahead, the massive doors of Dr. Kureha's castle stood open, warm light spilling onto the snow. Sanji must have arrived with Nami. Luffy staggered to his feet and lurched toward the entrance. Inside, he found an unexpected scene. Sanji lay unconscious on the floor, while a tiny figure, what appeared to be a raccoon dog standing on two legs, worked frantically over Nami on a medical bed. What are you? Luffy managed between ragged breaths. The creature jumped in fright, hiding, poorly, behind a cabinet. I'm not happy you called me cute, you bastard, it squeaked, despite Luffy having said no such thing. Are you, a talking tanuki? I'm a reindeer, the creature protested. A reindeer who ate the human fruit. And I'm not happy you're talking to me at all. Before Luffy could process this bizarre introduction, a bottle flew across the room and struck his head. Stop bothering my assistant and sit down before you collapse, ordered an elderly woman with an impossibly youthful figure, dressed like she was decades younger than her wrinkled face suggested. I'm Dr. Kureha. Your friend has Kestia fever, 130 years too early for brats like you to catch. Can you save her? Luffy asked, ignoring everything else. Kureha's expression softened slightly. Chopper already started the treatment. She'll live, thanks to you getting her here in time. She examined Luffy's frostbitten hands and face. Though you nearly killed yourself doing it. What kind of idiot climbs Drum Mountain in a blizzard without devil fruit powers? The kind who doesn't let his friends die, Luffy replied simply. Something like respect flashed in the doctor's eyes. Sit. Let Chopper treat your injuries while I finish with the girl. The reindeer, Chopper, approached cautiously, medical supplies clutched in his hooves. As he treated Luffy's frostbite and climbing injuries, the young captain studied him curiously. So you're a reindeer who became human from a devil fruit? Chopper nodded. The human fruit gave me human intelligence and the ability to transform. As if to demonstrate, he shifted from his small hybrid form to a more reindeer-like appearance, then to a taller, more humanoid form. That's awesome. Luffy exclaimed, genuinely impressed. You're like 3 people in one. Shut up. Chopper shouted, doing a happy wiggle despite his words. Complimenting me doesn't make me happy at all, you jerk. Their conversation was interrupted by Sanji regaining consciousness. The cook sat up groggily, rubbing a lump on his head. What happened? Luffy asked. The old witch happened, Sanji grumbled. I brought Nami Swan to the door, and next thing I know, I'm waking up with a headache. That's Dr. Witch to you, brat, Kureha called from Nami's bedside. And you're lucky that's all you got for barging into my castle unannounced. For the next 3 days, they remained at the castle while Nami recovered. Luffy spent much of this time befriending the reluctant Chopper, fascinated by the reindeer's medical knowledge and transformation abilities. Why do you live up here all alone with the old lady? Luffy asked on the second day, as they stood on the castle ramparts watching the sunset. Chopper's expression fell. People don't accept monsters like me. Even my own herd rejected me after I ate the devil fruit and grew this blue nose. You're not a monster, Luffy said with absolute conviction. You're a talking reindeer doctor who can transform. That's not monstrous, that's incredible. Really? Chopper sniffled. Really? You should join my crew. We could use a doctor, and I bet you'd love adventures. Before Chopper could respond, alarms blared throughout the castle. Kureha's voice echoed through the corridors, he's back. Wapol has returned. They rushed to the entrance hall where Kureha stood with a rifle, peering through a window. Outside, a strange procession approached through the snow, a large, round man with a metal jaw rode atop what appeared to be a woolly hippopotamus. Behind him marched soldiers in bizarre uniforms. Who's that? Luffy asked, joining the doctor at the window. Wapol, former king of Drum Kingdom, Kureha spat. The coward who abandoned his people when the Blackbeard pirates attacked, taking all the doctors with him except for my apprentice and me. He ate the munch fruit, Chopper added, trembling slightly. He can eat anything and transform his body using what he consumes. A devil fruit user, huh? Luffy cracked his knuckles. Interesting. Outside, Wapol's voice boomed across the snowy plateau, Dr. Kureha. Your squatting days are over. This castle belongs to me, King Wapol. Surrender now or face the consequences. Kureha loaded her rifle with practiced ease. That tin-jawed idiot abandoned his throne. This castle belongs to Drum's people now, and I'm protecting it until they decide otherwise. Sanji, who had joined them at the window, lit a cigarette. Want us to handle this, Doctor? We owe you for saving Nami-san. No need for you to get involved in our island's politics, Kureha began, but Luffy was already heading for the door. Too late, he called over his shoulder. I don't like bullies, especially ones who abandon their people. Outside, snow crunched under Luffy's sandals as he faced Wapol and his entourage. The former king's eyes widened in recognition. You're the pirate from the sea. The one who knocked me off my royal vessel. Luffy tilted his head, trying to remember. Did I? I knock lots of people around. You must not have been very memorable. Wapol's face purpled with rage. How dare you? I am the rightful king of Drum Kingdom. A king who ran away when his people needed him. Luffy shook his head. That's not a king. That's a coward in a crown. Kill him. Wapol ordered his soldiers. Then bring me his body so I can demonstrate the power of the Munch Munch fruit. The soldiers charged, weapons raised. Luffy stood his ground, waiting until they were almost upon him before moving. Then, in a blur of speed, he weaved through their formation, disarming and disabling them with precise strikes. Within seconds, Wapol's elite guard lay scattered across the snow, groaning in pain but largely unharmed. Luffy had pulled his punches. These were, after all, citizens of the island he was trying to help. Is that all? Luffy asked, not even breathing hard. Wapol's jaw, literally, dropped in shock, extending all the way to the ground before he snapped it back into place. Chess. Kuromarimo. Show this pirate what happens to those who defy their king. Two figures stepped forward, one tall and thin with a checkered face, the other squat with an afro hairstyle. They moved with more confidence than the regular soldiers, clearly Wapol's elite fighters. 2-on-1 seems unfair, Sanji remarked, stepping out of the castle to join Luffy. Stay back, Luffy said without turning. This won't take long. Chess fired arrows that exploded into flame upon impact, while Kuromarimo hurled what appeared to be hairballs that stuck to whatever they touched. Luffy dodged their attacks with apparent ease, his observation haki warning him of each projectile's path. Stop moving. Kuromarimo shouted in frustration as another volley of sticky hairballs missed their target. Make me, Luffy replied, closing the distance between them with startling speed. His first strike sent Chess flying backward into a snowbank. His second caught Kuromarimo under the chin, lifting the man off his feet before he crashed back to earth, unconscious. Wapol stared in disbelief as his top fighters fell in mere seconds. Fear replaced his arrogance as Luffy turned toward him. Wait, the former king pleaded. I'm a devil fruit user. You can't possibly defeat me. I've beaten devil fruit users before, Luffy replied calmly. Your power doesn't make you special, just different. Desperate now, Wapol opened his massive jaw and began consuming parts of the nearby landscape, rocks, trees, even pieces of his own mechanical weaponry. His body morphed and changed, metal fusing with flesh until he resembled a walking arsenal. Behold! Wapol House, he proclaimed from a mouth now located in the center of his chest. Cannons extended from his shoulders, and his arms had transformed into massive claws. Now you'll see the true power of the Munch Munch fruit. Luffy observed the transformation without apparent concern. You can change your shape, but you're still the same person inside, weak and afraid. Die. Wapol fired his cannons, sending explosive shells hurtling toward Luffy. Rather than dodging, Luffy stood his ground. He focused his will, channeling armament haki into his hands. The black coating spread more completely than ever before, covering both hands to the wrist. As the shells reached him, Luffy caught the first one, the explosion contained by his hockey-hardened palms. With a quick pivot, he hurled it back at the second incoming shell. The projectiles collided in mid-air, creating a massive explosion that showered the battlefield with smoke and debris. Wapol laughed triumphantly, believing he'd vaporized his opponent. His laughter died when Luffy emerged from the smoke unharmed, walking calmly toward him. Impossible. Wapol backed away. No human could survive that. I'm not just any human, Luffy replied. I'm the man who's going to be king of the pirates. Fear gave way to blind panic. Wapol fired everything in his arsenal, bullets, bombs, even parts of his own transformed body. Luffy evaded most attacks and blocked others with his hockey-enhanced arms, closing the distance methodically. When he stood directly before the trembling former king, Luffy drew back his blackened fist. This is for the people of Drum Kingdom. His punch connected with devastating force. Wapol's metal jaw crumpled like tissue paper as he rocketed backward, crashing through a castle wall before disappearing over the mountain's edge, his scream fading into the distance. Silence fell over the battlefield. The remaining conscious soldiers stared in shock, then dropped their weapons in surrender. From the castle doorway, Chopper watched with wide eyes. He defeated Wapol, with just one punch. Kureha nodded thoughtfully. That boy has more than physical strength. He has the one thing Wapol never possessed, an unbreakable will. Later that evening, as they gathered around Nami's bedside to celebrate her improving condition, Dalton arrived with news from the village. Wapol was found half buried in snow at the base of the mountain, he reported. He's alive, but his followers have abandoned him. The people have voted, Drum Kingdom will become a democracy, with no king. Good choice, Luffy approved, munching on a piece of meat. People should choose their own path. Dalton bowed deeply. On behalf of the citizens, I thank you for removing the tyrant who plagued us. Is there any way we can repay you? Before Luffy could respond, Chopper stepped forward timidly. If it's okay. I'd like to go with them. Kureha froze, her wine glass halfway to her lips. What did you say? I want to join Luffy's crew, Chopper said, more firmly this time. I want to become a pirate doctor and find a cure for every disease. Absolutely not. Kureha snapped. Your training isn't complete. You're still, a great doctor, Luffy interrupted. Who learned from the best? Kureha glared at him, but Luffy met her gaze steadily. After a tense moment, the old doctor's expression softened. You think flattery works on me, brat? I'm 139 years old, I've heard it all. It's not flattery if it's true, Luffy replied. And besides, every doctor needs to experience the world to grow stronger, right? A ghost of a smile touched Kureha's lips. Using my own teaching against me? Clever boy. She turned to Chopper. Is this truly what you want? The life of a pirate isn't easy, especially for someone like you. Chopper nodded decisively. I've been hiding on this mountain too long. I want to see the world, help people, and find the kind of acceptance Luffy and his friends have already shown me. Kureha sighed dramatically. Fine. Go. See if I care. But first, she pulled out a small blue backpack filled with medical supplies. Take this. I was saving it for your birthday, but it seems you're determined to leave early. Chopper accepted the gift with tears in his eyes. Doctorine. Don't get sentimental on me now, Kureha grumbled, though her own eyes glistened suspiciously. Just make sure you become the kind of doctor who can cure anything. Otherwise, I'll hunt you down and show you how incomplete your training really was. The next morning, the Straw Hats prepared to depart, Nami sufficiently recovered to travel. As they loaded supplies onto the Mary, Dalton approached with an unusual gift. This is an eternal pose to Alabasta, he explained, handing the specialized compass to Nami. We've had trading relationships with them in the past. It should help you reach your destination directly. Thank you, Nami said gratefully. This will save us a lot of trouble. Their farewell was interrupted by an explosion of color in the sky above the mountain. Pink cherry blossoms swirled against the blue winter sky, an impossible sight that brought villagers running from their homes in wonder. Cherry blossoms? In winter? Usopp gaped. How? Chopper, in his full reindeer form now with the blue backpack secured to his side, gazed up at the mountain with tears streaming down his furry face. Doctorine's final gift, he whispered. She found a way to make the cherry trees bloom in winter. It's beautiful. As they set sail, the pink petals followed them out to sea, dancing on the wind as if saying goodbye. Chopper stood at the railing, watching his home island recede until it disappeared over the horizon. Only then did he turn to face his new crew, his new family. I'm ready, he announced, shifting to his hybrid form. Dr. Tony Chopper, reporting for duty. Luffy grinned, placing his straw hat on Chopper's head momentarily. Welcome aboard, Doctor. Next stop, Alabasta. The heat of the Alabasta desert hit them like a physical wall after the cool ocean breeze. Sweat beaded instantly on their skin as they made their way through the bustling port town of Nanohana, seeking supplies for their journey inland. According to Vivi's letter, the rebel army is based in Yuba, Nami explained, consulting a map they'd purchased. But we need to find her first. She said she'd try to make contact in Nanohana. Princess Vivi Nefertari, the mysterious Miss Wednesday they'd encountered at Whiskey Peak, had been revealed as Alabasta's missing princess working undercover to uncover Crocodile's plot. Her letter, delivered by the news crew just after they left Drum Island, had outlined the kingdom's dire situation, a drought-stricken country on the brink of civil war orchestrated by the Shichibukai for his own mysterious purposes. How will we recognize her? Usopp wondered, adjusting his hat against the merciless sun. She'll be in disguise, right? She said she'd find us, Nami replied. We just need to stay visible without being too obvious about being pirates. So basically impossible, Zoro commented dryly. They split into groups to gather supplies more efficiently. Luffy, predictably, headed straight for the nearest restaurant, his nose leading him unerringly to the best food in town. The others agreed to meet him there after completing their tasks. Inside the crowded establishment, Luffy ordered enough food for 3 people and began devouring it with his usual enthusiasm. So focused was he on his meal that he failed to notice the commotion at the far end of the restaurant, until a familiar laugh caught his attention. Fire Fist. Here in Alabasta, a patron whispered loudly to his companion. The Marines will go crazy if they find out. Luffy's head snapped up. There, at the bar, sat a shirtless young man with a distinctive orange hat. Even from behind, Luffy recognized him instantly. "Ace," he shouted, mouth still full of food. The man turned, revealing freckled features that split into a wide grin. "Luffy. I thought I might run into you here." Portgas D. Ace, Luffy's sworn brother and commander of the Whitebeard Pirates 2nd Division, hopped off his stool and strode over. The brothers clasped hands before pulling each other into a backslapping hug. "Still causing trouble wherever you go?" Ace asked, ruffling Luffy's hair affectionately. "You know it." Luffy beamed. "What are you doing in Alabasta?" "Chasing someone," Ace replied, his expression darkening momentarily. "A traitor to the Whitebeard Pirates. My intel suggests he passed through here." Their reunion was interrupted by the restaurant door slamming open. Marine Captain Smoker stood in the entrance, his gaze locking onto Luffy. "Straw Hat. I knew I'd find you here," Smoker growled, smoke already seeping from his body. "You won't escape me this time." Luffy groaned. "Can't even eat in peace." "Ace, we gotta go." "Still not a fan of the Marines, huh?" Ace chuckled. "Some things never change." As Smoker charged forward, Ace stepped between him and Luffy. Mind if I handle this, little brother? Consider it a welcome to the Grand Line gift. Without waiting for an answer, Ace's body erupted into flames that met Smoker's advancing smoke. The elemental clash created a spectacular display as fire and smoke swirled together, neither gaining advantage. Logia versus Logia, a terrified patron gasped. We need to get out of here. Taking advantage of the distraction, Luffy grabbed his remaining food and bolted for the back door. Ace followed moments later, his fire providing cover as they escaped into the crowded marketplace. That was Smoker from Logue Town. Luffy exclaimed as they ran. He's been chasing me since East Blue. Persistent guy, Ace remarked. My flames won't hurt him, but they'll keep him busy for a while. They ducked through alleyways until they were reasonably sure they'd lost pursuit, then found a quiet rooftop to catch their breath. So, Ace said, settling cross-legged across from Luffy. I've been hearing interesting stories about my little brother. The hockey pirate, they're calling you in some circles. Luffy blinked in surprise. I have a nickname already. After what you did to Arlong and in Drum Kingdom. Word travels fast in the Grand Line. Ace studied him with newfound respect. Gramps said you never ate a devil fruit, but I didn't believe you could make it this far without one. I don't need stretchy powers, Luffy replied, flexing an arm. I've got these. Plus, I've been working on my hockey. Show me, Ace challenged. Luffy concentrated, focusing his will into his fist. The now familiar black sheen spread across his knuckles and partially up his forearm. Ace whistled, impressed. Armament hockey at your age? Without a devil fruit to compensate? That's rare, Luffy. Really rare. Gramps started training me earlier because I didn't have devil fruit advantages, Luffy explained. Said I needed an edge if I was stupid enough to become a pirate. Typical Garp, Ace laughed. But he did you a favor. Most pirates rely too heavily on their devil fruit powers, they never develop other strengths. Like you with your fire. Luffy teased. Hey, I was plenty strong before I ate the Mera Mera no Mi. Ace protested, then grinned sheepishly. But yeah, having fire powers does make things easier sometimes. They caught up on each other's adventures since their childhood separation. Ace described joining the Whitebeard Pirates, rising to the position of 2nd Division Commander, and his current mission to hunt down the traitor Blackbeard. Luffy shared his journey from East Blue to the Grand Line, the gathering of his crew, and their mission to help Princess Vivi save Alabasta from Crocodile. Crocodile? Ace frowned. The Shichibukai? Luffy, that's not an opponent to take lightly. He's a Logia user, sand powers. Without a devil fruit of your own. I'll figure it out, Luffy said confidently. I always do. At least let me give you some advice, Ace insisted. Logia users have one consistent weakness, their elemental nature can be countered. For Crocodile, that's moisture. Water or blood will solidify his sand temporarily, making him vulnerable. Luffy absorbed this information with unusual attentiveness. Water makes him solid. Got it. But don't get cocky, Ace warned. Even with that knowledge, he's dangerous. He wouldn't have a Shichibukai position if he wasn't extremely powerful. Their conversation was interrupted by shouts from below. The rest of the Straw Hat crew had assembled in the square, apparently searching for their captain. Looks like your crew's looking for you, Ace observed. I should get going anyway. My target won't track himself. You're leaving already? Luffy asked, disappointment evident in his voice. Ace smiled, reaching into his pocket and tearing a piece from a paper. Here. This is a Vivre card, a special paper that always points toward the person it was made from. He handed the scrap to Luffy. Keep it. It will always point toward me, so we can find each other again. Luffy accepted the gift reverently. Thanks, Ace. One more thing, Ace said, suddenly serious. When you face Crocodile, remember what Shanks showed you that day with the Sea King. That might be your best weapon against a Logia. You mean Conqueror's Haki? Ace nodded. Most Logia users become overconfident, believing they're untouchable. Conqueror's Haki can shake that confidence, create a moment of vulnerability. If you can manifest it deliberately. I'm still figuring that part out, Luffy admitted. It only happened once, in Logue Town, and I wasn't trying to do it. Well, nothing motivates learning like a life-or-death battle, Ace said with a wry smile. Just don't die, little brother. You still have to keep our promise. I will, Luffy vowed. I'm going to be king of the pirates. I know. Ace stood and offered his hand, pulling Luffy to his feet. They embraced once more before Ace stepped to the edge of the roof. Until we meet again, Luffy. Take care of yourself. You too, Ace. With a salute and a grin, Ace leapt from the roof, his body transforming into fire as he soared away above the stunned crowds. Luffy rejoined his crew, introducing them to the concept of Vivre cards and explaining his encounter with his brother. As they talked, a hooded figure approached cautiously. Luffy-san, a familiar voice called softly. Is that really you? The hood fell back to reveal blue hair and worried eyes. Princess Vivi had found them at last. After quick introductions to Chopper, whom Vivi hadn't met previously, they retreated to a quieter location where the princess could explain the situation fully. Crocodile has been manipulating both sides, she explained, her voice tight with anger. He created the dance powder shortage, making it appear the king was hoarding rain for the capital while the rest of the country suffered drought. Now he's positioned himself as Alabasta's savior while secretly pushing the rebels toward all-out war. But why? Nami asked. What does he gain from destroying the kingdom? I don't know yet, Vivi admitted. But I need to reach Alyabarna before the rebel army. If I can speak with their leader, Koza, I might convince him of the truth before it's too late. Then that's our mission, Luffy declared. Get Vivi to Alyabarna, expose Crocodile's plan, and kick his sandy ass. Their journey across the desert was brutal. Even with supplies purchased in Nanohana, the relentless sun and shifting sands took their toll. Chopper, with his fur coat, suffered particularly, requiring a special shade structure built onto Eyelash, the camel they'd acquired. Vivi led them expertly, finding hidden oases and sheltered routes known only to natives. Along the way, they encountered evidence of Crocodile's machinations, villages destroyed by manufactured drought, people displaced and desperate, marines and bounty hunters searching for anyone who might interfere with the Shichibukai's plans. In Yuba, they discovered the rebel army had already moved on toward Alyabarna, accelerating their timeline dangerously. Worse, they learned that Crocodile had publicly announced a time and place for Princess Vivi to surrender in Rain Base, a transparent trap. It's too obvious, Zoro pointed out. He knows you wouldn't fall for something so simple. He's not expecting me to surrender, Vivi agreed grimly. He wants to lure us away from Alyabarna while his agents trigger the final conflict. Then we do the unexpected, Luffy decided. We spring his trap deliberately. What? The crew chorused in unified disbelief. Crocodile wants us in Rain Base, away from Alyabarna. Luffy grinned. Perfect. We'll go to Rain Base and take him down directly. Cut off the snake's head. Despite concerns about the recklessness of this plan, the crew recognized the logic. If Crocodile fell, his organization would likely collapse, potentially averting the civil war entirely. With time running short, they set course for Rain Base, the gambling city where Crocodile maintained his desert headquarters. They arrived to find a city of stark contrasts, opulent casinos and luxury hotels rising from the desert alongside slums where the desperate sought relief from the heat. At the center stood Rain Dinners, Crocodile's personal casino and the tallest structure for miles. Subtle, Sanji remarked sarcastically, eyeing the crocodile-shaped building. How do we get inside? The front door, Luffy replied, already walking toward the ornate entrance. He invited us, remember? Luffy-san. Vivi protested. We need a plan. But Luffy continued forward, determination in every step. The plan is simple. I fight Crocodile while you guys secure evidence of his plot. Then we take that evidence to the rebels and the royal army. And how exactly do you plan to fight a Logia user? Nami demanded, hurrying after him. You can't hit sand. Ace told me water makes him solid. Luffy patted a water barrel strapped to his back. I've got water. The simplicity of this approach left the crew momentarily speechless. Before they could formulate further objections, marine whistles sounded behind them. Captain Smoker had caught up again, along with his sword-wielding subordinate Tashigi. Straw Hat. Smoker bellowed, smoke already billowing from his body. Your luck ends here. We don't have time for this, Zoro muttered, drawing his swords as Tashigi approached, her own blade ready. You guys handle the marines, Luffy ordered. I'm going after Crocodile. Vivi, come with me, you know what evidence we need. Without waiting for confirmation, Luffy grabbed the princess's wrist and dashed toward Rain Dinners, leaving his crew to deal with the marine pursuit. Inside, they found themselves in a lavish casino where well-dressed patrons gambled away fortunes, seemingly oblivious to the drought ravaging the rest of the country. Welcome to Rain Dinners, a smooth voice announced over hidden speakers. Princess Vivi and Straw Hat Luffy. I've been expecting you. The casino floor suddenly transformed, walls shifting to reveal hidden passages while the regular patrons evacuated through concealed exits. Within moments, Luffy and Vivi stood alone in the center of a reconfigured space that now resembled a maze. Mr. Zero welcomes you to the challenge arena, the voice continued. Princess, if you wish to prevent bloodshed in Alyabarna, you must reach the central chamber within 30 minutes. Straw Hat, a different path awaits you. Choose wisely. Multiple corridors opened around them, each leading deeper into the building. Vivi clutched Luffy's arm, clearly recognizing the separation strategy. It's a trap, she whispered unnecessarily. We should stay together. No, Luffy decided after a moment's thought. That's what he expects. You find the evidence we need. I'll find him. But Luffy-san, trust me, Vivi. I can handle Crocodile. Reluctantly, the princess nodded. They chose separate paths, Vivi heading toward what appeared to be administrative offices while Luffy took the most direct route, smashing through walls rather than following the prescribed maze. Property damage already, the smooth voice commented with a chuckle. How predictably barbaric. Luffy ignored the taunt, continuing to forge his own path through the casino. His observation haki, growing more refined through constant battles, guided him toward the center of the building where he sensed a powerful presence waiting. Finally, he burst through an ornate door into a luxurious office. Behind a massive desk sat a tall man with a hook for a left hand, his face bearing a long scar across the bridge of his nose. He wore an expensive fur coat despite the desert heat, and his expression carried the easy confidence of someone unaccustomed to challenge. Straw Hat Luffy, Sir Crocodile greeted him, not bothering to stand. I expected more finesse from a pirate making such waves in the Grand Line. I'm not big on finesse, Luffy replied, rolling his shoulders. Just results. Crocodile's smile didn't reach his eyes. Indeed. Well, let's discuss results. In approximately 1 hour, both the rebel army and the royal forces will clash in Alyabarna. Neither Princess Vivi nor you can stop it now. We'll see about that after I beat you. A dry laugh escaped the Shichibukai. Beat me? You're not even in my league, boy. I am a Logia user with years of Grand Line experience. You're a rookie who didn't even eat a devil fruit. Being a devil fruit user doesn't make you special, Luffy said, echoing his words to Wapol. Just different. Something in his tone made Crocodile's eyes narrow slightly. The Shichibukai stood, his massive frame dwarfing the desk before him. Different, perhaps, he conceded. but vastly superior in combat. Allow me to demonstrate. His right arm dissolved into sand, stretching across the room with alarming speed. Luffy dodged, the attack missing him by inches. Not bad reflexes, Crocodile acknowledged. But dodging isn't victory. Luffy reached for the water barrel on his back, but before he could uncork it, the sand stream changed direction, catching him from behind. It surrounded his torso, constricting painfully. Desert Encierro, Crocodile named the technique, his face impassive as he began draining the moisture from Luffy's body. This is the difference between us, Straw Hat. You cannot touch me, but I can reduce you to a desiccated husk with a gesture. Luffy struggled, feeling his strength ebbing as his body dried out. With a desperate effort, he managed to twist enough to break the water barrel against his own back. Water splashed over him and the sand constricting him. Instantly, Crocodile's expression changed. The sand touching the water solidified, becoming temporarily vulnerable. Luffy didn't waste the opportunity. He broke free of the now solid restraint and launched himself at Crocodile, his fist connecting solidly with the Shichibukai's jaw. Crocodile staggered backward, genuine shock registering on his face as he touched blood at the corner of his mouth. "You hit me," he said, as if he couldn't quite believe it. "You actually landed a physical blow." "Told you water would work," Luffy grinned, shaking droplets from his hair. And that was just the beginning. Rage replaced surprise on Crocodile's face. "Impudent brat. You think a parlor trick and one lucky punch make you my equal?" The office around them began to dissolve as Crocodile unleashed his power fully. Sand filled the air, obscuring vision and threatening to overwhelm Luffy. The Shichibukai himself seemed to merge with the sandstorm, his laughter echoing from all directions. "What will you do now, Straw Hat? Your water is gone, and I am everywhere." Luffy closed his eyes, relying on his observation haki to track Crocodile's movements within the sand. When he sensed an attack coming from his left, he pivoted and unleashed a blindingly fast kick that connected with something solid. Crocodile materialized, clutching his side in pain and disbelief. "Impossible. How did you, Haki?" Luffy explained simply. "I can sense where you are, even when you're sand." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Crocodile's face. He hadn't anticipated a rookie pirate with developed haki abilities. But uncertainty quickly hardened into cold calculation. "Impressive," the Shichibukai admitted. "But ultimately futile. Even if you can track me, you've lost your water advantage. And without it, you cannot harm me." As if to demonstrate, he transformed his entire body into sand, swirling around Luffy in an increasingly tight vortex. The sand particles began cutting into Luffy's skin like millions of tiny blades. Desert Girasol, Crocodile named this technique. No water, no escape. Just the slow, painful extraction of every drop of moisture from your body. Luffy felt blood trickling from dozens of small cuts as the sand vortex intensified. His remaining water-dampened clothes were drying rapidly in the unnaturally desiccated air. Soon, he would have no means of solidifying Crocodile's body. Desperation sparked innovation. Luffy remembered Ace's parting advice: "Remember what Shanks showed you that day with the Sea King. Conqueror's haki, the ability to impose one's will directly on others." He had manifested it unconsciously in Logtown, but could he summon it deliberately? With no other options remaining, he had to try. Centering himself amidst the painful sandstorm, Luffy focused on his will, his determination to protect Vivi and her country, to defeat Crocodile, to keep his promise to Shanks and become Pirate King. He gathered these feelings, concentrating them into a singular purpose, then released them in an explosive burst of willpower. "Enough," he roared, his voice carrying a force beyond physical sound. The sandstorm faltered momentarily as Crocodile's concentration broke. In that split second of disruption, Luffy charged forward, his right arm blackening with armament haki. He struck at the partially materialized Shichibukai with everything he had. Hawk Strike, Desert Breaker. The hockey-enhanced blow connected solidly with Crocodile's chest, sending him crashing through the wall behind him. Debris rained down as dust filled the air, obscuring the aftermath of the attack. When visibility returned, Crocodile stood amid the rubble, his fur coat torn and bloody saliva dripping from his mouth. His eyes, however, showed more curiosity than fear. Conqueror's haki, he observed, wiping blood from his lips. In one so young. How fascinating. Give up, Crocodile, Luffy demanded, though his own body showed the strain of the battle. Your plan is finished. Vivi is probably finding your evidence right now. Is she? Crocodile's smile returned, more sinister than before. Check your precious princess, Straw Hat. A section of wall shifted, revealing a monitor screen. On it, Vivi could be seen trapped in a flooding chamber, water already reaching her waist as she desperately searched for an exit. In 10 minutes, that room will be completely underwater, Crocodile informed him with malicious pleasure. The princess of the desert kingdom, drowned in the water meant to save her people. Poetic, don't you think? Rage filled Luffy, but also recognition of Crocodile's strategy. The Shichibukai was trying to divide his attention, force him to choose between continuing their battle and saving Vivi. You're stalling, Luffy realized aloud. Trying to keep me here while your agents trigger the war in Alyabarna. Very perceptive, Crocodile acknowledged. Though it hardly matters now. You've shown interesting abilities, Straw Hat, but you're out of water and running out of strength. Meanwhile, I have yet to utilize my full power. As if to demonstrate, Crocodile raised his hook hand. The golden covering fell away, revealing a purple-tinged poison hook beneath. One scratch, and even your remarkable constitution won't save you. Luffy assessed his situation with unusual clarity. Crocodile was right, he had expended much of his strength already, while the Shichibukai had hidden weapons still in reserve. More importantly, Vivi's life hung in the balance, and with it, the fate of Alabasta. This isn't over, Luffy promised, backing toward the exit. Not by a long shot. Running away? Crocodile laughed mockingly. How disappointing. Not running, Luffy corrected. Prioritizing. Vivi comes first. You'll get yours later. Before Crocodile could respond, Luffy dashed from the room, following his observation haki to locate Vivi. He found the flooding chamber 2 floors below, its doors sealed with mechanical locks. Without hesitation, Luffy channeled armament haki into both fists and attacked the door with a barrage of blows. The metal dented, then buckled, finally tearing away completely. Water gushed out, carrying a gasping Vivi with it. Luffy-san, she cried once she'd caught her breath. Crocodile, he has a weapon called Pluton, he's planning to, tell me later, Luffy interrupted, helping her to her feet. We need to get to Alyabarna now. They navigated the now chaotic casino, where panicked staff fled the property following the sounds of destruction from Luffy's battle. Outside, they found the rest of the crew waiting, having apparently dispatched or evaded the marine pursuers. Luffy! Nami exclaimed with relief. What happened? Where's Crocodile? Still inside, Luffy admitted. We're changing plans. All of us to Alyabarna, now. We have to stop the war before it starts. Their journey to the capital became a desperate race against time. With eyelash and additional riding animals procured in Rain Base, they crossed the desert at dangerous speed. Vivi explained what she had discovered. Crocodile sought an ancient weapon called Pluton, supposedly hidden somewhere in Alabasta. The civil war was merely a smokescreen to allow his agents to search the country thoroughly during the chaos. They reached Alyabarna as the rebel and royal armies assembled on opposite sides of the city. Massive dust clouds signaled the rebels' approach from the west, while the gleaming armor of the royal guard caught the sun's rays from the east. We need to split up, Vivi decided. Find the rebel leaders and the royal commanders simultaneously. Show them the evidence. What evidence? Zoro asked. Did you actually get proof of Crocodile's plan? Vivi produced a small recording dial, a grand line device capable of capturing and replaying sounds. Crocodile's own words, confirming everything. He didn't realize I had this when he was monologuing about Pluton and destroying the kingdom. With renewed hope, they divided into teams. Vivi, Chopper and Sanji would approach the rebels, while Nami, Usopp and Zoro headed for the royal army. Luffy, meanwhile, had a different target. "I'm going back for Crocodile," he announced. "He'll be coming here to oversee his plan. I'll intercept him before he reaches the battlefield." "Alone?" Nami protested. "After what happened last time." "I'll be ready this time," Luffy assured her, his expression unusually serious. "I understand his powers better now. And I have a plan." Before anyone could argue further, the distinct sound of massive wings beating the air drew their attention skyward. A giant falcon circled overhead, and riding it was the unmistakable figure of Sir Crocodile. "Too late," Luffy muttered. "He's already here." The Shichibukai descended at the edge of the city, clearly intending to observe the impending clash from a safe distance. His companion, the mysterious Miss All-Sunday, accompanied him, her face impassive as always. "New plan," Luffy decided. "You guys still try to stop the armies. I'm going to make sure Crocodile can't interfere." Without waiting for responses, he dashed toward the Shichibukai's position, weaving through crowded streets and leaping over buildings with the agility born from years of mountain training. As he ran, Luffy inventoried his resources. The water barrel was gone, but he wasn't without options. Crocodile's weakness was moisture, and there were many sources of that besides drinking water. He reached the outskirts of Alyabarna just as the Shichibukai was preparing to mount his falcon again. Luffy's arrival made Crocodile pause, an amused smile crossing his scarred face. "Back for more punishment, Straw Hat. Your persistence is admirable, if foolish. I'm not letting you anywhere near those armies," Luffy declared, positioning himself between Crocodile and the city. "And how do you propose to stop me?" Crocodile spread his arms mockingly. "Your water trick won't work twice, and we've already established that without it, you cannot touch me." Instead of answering, Luffy bit deeply into his own thumb, drawing blood. Before Crocodile could react to this strange action, Luffy spat the blood directly at the Shichibukai's face. The crimson droplets struck Crocodile's cheek, solidifying the sand momentarily. His expression of shock quickly turned to disgust. "Blood? You think your bodily fluids will save you?" He wiped the blood away contemptuously. "Desperate and disgusting. Blood is just water with stuff in it," Luffy replied pragmatically. "And I've got plenty." Crocodile's eyes narrowed. Not for long. The battle that ensued was unlike any Luffy had experienced before. Without a consistent water source, he was forced to rely on his own blood, spitting it at critical moments to solidify portions of Crocodile's body long enough to land strikes. Each successful hit came at the cost of his own vitality, a dangerous trade that couldn't be sustained indefinitely. Crocodile, realizing Luffy's strategy, became more cautious. He maintained distance, using ranged sand attacks that slowly wore Luffy down while avoiding close combat where the blood tactic might be effective. "You're weakening, Straw Hat," Crocodile observed as Luffy panted heavily, blood running from numerous wounds. "Your unorthodox strategy has earned my respect, but it's fundamentally flawed. You're killing yourself faster than you're harming me." Luffy knew he was right. The loss of blood, combined with the fatigue of their earlier battle and the desert crossing, had depleted his reserves dangerously. He needed to end this quickly, with a decisive blow rather than a war of attrition. As if sensing his desperation, Crocodile pressed his advantage. Desert Spada. A blade of compressed sand shot toward Luffy, who barely evaded its lethal edge. The attack continued past him, slicing through a massive stone column that toppled with a thunderous crash. Dust clouded the air, temporarily obscuring visibility between the combatants. In that moment of concealment, Luffy acted. He gathered his remaining strength, focusing his will with unprecedented clarity. When the dust cleared, he stood differently, more centered, more focused, his eyes reflecting a determination that gave even Crocodile pause. "What's this?" the Shichibukai asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. "Some new trick?" "No tricks," Luffy replied quietly. "Just my will against yours." He charged forward, seemingly heedless of the danger. Crocodile responded reflexively, transforming into a swirling sandstorm that should have shredded any attacker. But this time, something different happened. As Luffy approached the heart of the sandstorm, he released his Conqueror's Haki in a focused, controlled burst, not the wild explosion of earlier, but a precise application of will. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The sandstorm faltered as Crocodile's consciousness was momentarily overwhelmed by the Haki. In that crucial instant of vulnerability, Luffy struck. His fist, coated with both armament Haki and his own blood, connected with Crocodile's partially solidified form. The impact sent the Shichibukai flying backward, his body crashing through a series of ancient columns before coming to rest amid the rubble. This time, he didn't immediately rise. Luffy approached cautiously, his body at its limit but his will undiminished. Crocodile lay amid the debris, blood pooling beneath him, his eyes open but unfocused. "How?" the Shichibukai asked, his voice barely audible. "How does someone without a devil fruit?" "Because being Pirate King isn't about having the strongest power," Luffy replied, standing over his defeated opponent. "It's about having the strongest will." Before Crocodile could respond, the ground began to shake. From the center of Alyabarna, a massive plume of water erupted into the sky, a result of the ancient irrigation system being reactivated, Luffy would later learn. The sight of water, precious water, reaching toward the heavens broke whatever remaining resolve Crocodile possessed. His eyes closed in defeat as rain began to fall for the first time in years across the drought-stricken capital. Luffy stood in the rain, letting it wash the blood and sand from his battered body. In the distance, he could see the armies dispersing, evidence that his crew had succeeded in preventing the clash. Vivi's voice could be heard through amplification systems, addressing her people with the truth about Crocodile's machinations. Miss All Sunday, Robin, approached him cautiously, her usual composure slightly shaken by Crocodile's defeat. "Impressive," she acknowledged. "Few have ever bested a Logia user without devil fruit powers of their own." "What happens now?" Luffy asked, too exhausted for hostility. "You were his partner, right?" "Partner is perhaps too strong a word," Robin replied with a small smile. "Let's say our arrangement has concluded with his defeat." She glanced toward the celebrating city. "It seems Princess Vivi has reclaimed her kingdom. My services are no longer required here. What will you do?" Robin's expression turned enigmatic. "Continue searching, I suppose. There are many mysteries left in this world." Before Luffy could question her further, his crew arrived, dirty, injured, but triumphant. They surrounded him with cheers and concerned inquiries about his condition. "Luffy! You actually beat Crocodile!" Usopp exclaimed, awe in his voice. "A Shichibukai. Told you I had a plan." Luffy grinned weakly before collapsing from exhaustion. He awoke 3 days later in the royal palace, his wounds treated and his strength beginning to return. His crew took turns explaining what had happened after his collapse, how the Marines had arrived to arrest Crocodile, how King Cobra had declared a national celebration, how Vivi had been restored to her rightful place as princess. "And the mysterious woman? Robin?" Luffy asked. "Disappeared," Nami reported. "No one knows where she went after the battle." The celebration in Alyabarna lasted for days. Water flowed once more through the ancient canals, bringing life back to the parched kingdom. The Straw Hats were honored as heroes, though Luffy consistently redirected praise to Vivi, insisting she was the true savior of Alabasta. On their final night in the palace, Vivi approached Luffy privately on a balcony overlooking the rejuvenated city. "I can never thank you enough," she said softly. You and your crew risked everything for my country. That's what friends do, Luffy replied simply, gazing at the stars. About that, Vivi hesitated. I've been thinking about your invitation to join your crew permanently. Luffy turned to her, his expression unreadable. And I can't, Vivi said, tears forming in her eyes. My place is here, with my people. They need their princess now more than ever. I know, Luffy smiled gently. I've always known. You have. You love your country too much to leave it, Luffy explained. That's why we fought so hard for you, because you would have done the same. Vivi wiped away tears. But I'll miss you all terribly. We'll always be Nakama, Luffy assured her. Distance doesn't change that. The next morning, the Straw Hats prepared to depart quietly, avoiding the Marines still present in the capital. As they boarded the Mary, a familiar figure waited on deck, Robin, seated casually against the mast as if she belonged there. What are you doing on our ship? Nami demanded suspiciously. Waiting for the captain, of course, Robin replied with a mysterious smile. I have a proposition for him. When Luffy arrived, Robin explained herself directly. I have nowhere to go now that Baroque Works has fallen. The world government has hunted me since I was 8 years old. I possess knowledge they fear, including how to read the ancient language on those strange cubes called poneglyphs. Poneglyphs? Luffy repeated, unfamiliar with the term. Stone cubes carved with the history of the Void Century, Robin explained. Including, perhaps, the location of certain legendary treasures. Like the One Piece. Luffy's interest was immediately piqued. Possibly, Robin smiled. I can't say for certain. But I'd like to find out, with your help. You've proven remarkably capable of achieving the impossible. The crew exchanged uncertain glances, but Luffy didn't hesitate. Welcome aboard, he declared, extending his hand. Any enemy of the world government is a friend of ours. Robin's surprise at his easy acceptance quickly gave way to genuine gratitude. Thank you, Captain San. I promise to be useful. As they set sail from Alabasta, leaving behind a princess who would forever remain Nakama in spirit, Luffy stood at the figurehead of the Going Merry. The defeat of Crocodile had earned him his first official bounty, a staggering 100 million berries, accompanied by a new epithet, Hockey Luffy. Hockey Luffy, huh? He mused, adjusting his straw hat against the sea breeze. I like the sound of that. Robin approached, standing beside him as they watched the horizon. Your reputation will spread quickly now. The world government doesn't take kindly to those who defeat their Shichibukai. Let them come, Luffy replied confidently. We're just getting started. Indeed, Robin agreed. Though I must ask, most pirates with your level of accomplishment possess devil fruit powers. Why didn't you ever seek one for yourself? Luffy smiled, touching the straw hat reverently. Because Shanks showed me something important the day he saved my life. He showed me that true strength comes from within, not from what powers you possess. He gazed toward the endless horizon, where greater adventures awaited. Besides, becoming Pirate King through shortcuts wouldn't mean anything. The hard path makes the achievement worthwhile. As the Going Merry sailed into the sunset, carrying its expanded crew toward new islands and challenges, Monkey D. Luffy's conviction remained unshakable. Without the advantages of a devil fruit, he had defeated a Shichibukai, liberated a kingdom, and assembled a crew of dreamers as determined as himself. The journey ahead would test them in ways they couldn't imagine, but one thing was certain: willpower, not supernatural ability, would ultimately determine who claimed the greatest treasure of all. And in that race, the boy in the straw hat, the Hockey Pirate, had already proven himself a formidable contender. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.